Chapter 101, Magic Cricket Fight. Customers drifted in and out of the instant photos booth in Diagon Alley. Behind the counter, Sophie held a stack of glossy pictures, hesitating over which to place on the little wooden chessboard. A new customer had just come in. She didn't look up as she told him. Cameras on the left, supplies on the right, lenses in the drawer. Prices are on the labels. Checkout is automatic once you've made your selection. Automatic checkout? The red-haired wizard asked, clearly a first-time customer. He looked baffled. You just scan the label at the reader and drop your money into the slot, Susan said without looking away from the board. Her eyes lit up as she laid a photo of the dark wizard Cypri onto the square. Scan it, she added, more to herself than to him. The man hesitated, then did as she suggested. Hey, it really gives change automatically, he said as silver sickles and copper nuts skittered out of the cash box. 3 sickles and 6 nuts, neither more nor less. Perfect change every time, Susan grinned. The man, who had removed the label from the picture he'd bought, turned to watch the tiny figures on the chessboard. The photograph shimmered, dissolved into motes of light, and a lifelike wizard stepped onto the square. He looked exactly like the image, drew his wand, and lunged at his opponent. Cypri moved fast, shouting Expelliarmus. Jessica's wizard, her chosen piece, was hit. His wand clattered to the board. What is this? Wizard's chess? The customer asked, enthralled. It's magical cricket fighting, Rogge said with a long, helpless sigh as he came over. He shouldn't have agreed to make Sophie a toy to relieve her boredom. The two of them were completely absorbed, as if they'd rediscovered an old addiction. He'd nearly forgotten their own child had come home from school hours ago. Cricket? The customer echoed. It's a creature-based chess, Sophie said. Think of it as beast chess, if you like. Beast chess, the redhead muttered. The name sounded odd to him, but he couldn't look away from the tiny combat. The match on the board reached a tense moment. Jessica's piece, Artemisia, had been disarmed but refused to give up. He retreated a few steps and vanished from view. Where'd he go? The customer asked, leaning in. Artemisia didn't just disappear. He shifted tactics. The figure reappeared, and with no need for a wand, he launched a massive, invisible punch at Cypri. Susan's wizard dodged, but the blow hit the board with a thud and left a dent in the wood. Goodness, the red-haired man breathed. The illusion was too real to be just a picture. Cypri gathered himself and countered with a powerful diffindo. With a bang, Artemisia exploded into light and flew off the board as a flat photograph. Jessica's winning streak had been broken. She looked at the empty square, annoyed, and rifled through her remaining photos. Jessica, we agreed. The same named picture that loses can't be played again, Susan reminded, snatching up the Artemisia cards she'd just won. Ahem, I'm on vacation, Rogge said, drumming his knuckles on the table until both women finally glanced up. Rogge, Susan called with surprise. Want a round of beast chess? Rogge blinked. For a second he thought she'd said, want to play Gwent. Son, are you on holiday? What's the date today? Jessica jumped up and pinched his cheeks twice, fussing over him like a doting mother. Hand over your pictures. Susan completely cleaned me out. I'm not as popular as my pictures then, Rogge grumbled. Rogge, the automatic till is so useful. I don't have to add up anything by hand now, Susan crowed. You could just buy a parrot, Rogge muttered. Then you wouldn't have to talk to anyone. Sophie's eyes widened at that. Brilliant, Susan suddenly declared, as if she'd discovered a new continent. I'll go to the magical menagerie and ask if they sell a talking macaw. I told you, I do alchemy, not mechanics, Rogge said with a shake of his head. You want a mechanical parrot, you go to a pet shop in London. Besides, I'd have to teach it to talk. Oh, son, it's my fault. Forgot today was your holiday, Jessica said, still fussing. You did make the chessboard, didn't you? Do you sell it? Not for sale, yet, Rogge replied. He wasn't sure he even wanted to. The board had been a whim. He'd made it for Sophie. That's wonderful. Write to me when you release them. I've got a whole pile of pictures that finally could be used. The red-haired man, who hadn't left, pulled a scrap of cloth from his sleeve and scrawled his address as he spoke, smiling like a giddy collector. Rogge felt a little embarrassed at the attention. Actually, we do have a waiting list, Jessica said, flipping open a notebook filled with names and addresses left by other wizards. See? So many. Rogge hadn't expected his little project to attract so much interest. Wizards, it seemed, loved animated paper figures. You need a name for it, Jessica said. Wizards chess is taken, and we definitely can't call it beast chess or magical cricket fighting. Auto chess, Rogge said, half joking. He murmured a quick charm and slipped the board into his undetectable extension charm bag. 1992 was still early. Muggles hadn't invented anything like it. He hadn't even noticed the other photographs left on the table. "Son, why did you take it away?" Sophie called after him when he started to leave. "The chessboard needs a few more tweaks." "Don't worry, it'll be ready before school starts," Rogge promised. "Sigh, the menagerie clerk said they only sell living creatures," Susan added with a pout. She turned to Rogge with pleading eyes. "Make me a mechanical parrot, Rogge, then I wouldn't have to feed it." Rogge shook his head and waved them off. "Nope, go ask a pet shop in London." They left, and for a moment, Sophie watched the empty table where the photos and board had been. "Rogge," she called after them, but they were already gone. Later that afternoon, in the garden of the villa by the Thames, Jessica brought out a French meal she'd prepared herself. "Try this. It's authentic. I flew in the ingredients," she said, placing a slice of foie gras d'Alsace on her son's plate. Rogge took a bite and closed his eyes. The foie gras was decadent and silky, melting like a rich cloud on his tongue. He reached for another slice before he knew it. "Your mother's a wonder with French cooking," Jessica said proudly. "If you weren't on holiday, I wouldn't bother." "You just didn't pick me up at the station," Rogge grumbled through a mouthful, then wiped his chin and asked, "Mom, isn't Lestrange a British family name? Why do you say Grandpa might be from France?" Jessica explained patiently. "Lestrange exists in both countries, but they aren't the same family. Your maternal grandfather was from the Corvus line, the main branch. The British Lestranges are from Rodolphus's line, a distant offshoot. They split over 200 years ago. After your grandfather died, I never went back to France. The only similarity now is the Raven crest." Rogge frowned, sorting through the bits of gossip and history. He'd been thinking about Voldemort and Bella, and remembered Bella's husband had the Lestrange name. "Something like that," he said noncommittally. To prove a point, Rogge raised his wand and conjured his Patronus. A silver raven burst forth and on his signal fluttered into Jessica's hand. "A raven?" Jessica's eyes lit up. "Of course, my handsome boy has a raven Patronus. It runs in the family." She smiled, a wave of memory washing over her. "The Lestrange motto, never betray each other. If you meet a Lestrange who's an enemy, don't hesitate. Do what must be done." The glowing raven circled the garden. Yumi, Diana, and Sailor, 3 bright-eyed children from the household, came running over to play with the shimmering creature. Jessica watched him eat and then grew serious. "I forgot to tell you, someone broke into the manor in Ireland again." "Thieves?" Rogge asked, trying to imagine why anyone would bother with their run-down old house. He sat back in the wicker chair, forehead creased. Who would go to a derelict manor in the middle of nowhere, and why? Chapter 1 or 2, Nocturne Alley. "Those are all Muggle books, aren't they?" Jessica told Bubble to clear the dishes as she and her son lingered in the garden, watching the Thames glitter in the night. "I should go tomorrow," Roger muttered. He still needed to check. That damned thief, couldn't he let them have a few days of peace? "Why don't you build a proper library?" Jessica suggested. This time she didn't argue. It was family property. The pilfering couldn't go on. "Do you want me to find a wizard construction firm? 300,000 galleons should be more than enough." "Those gougers," Roger shook his head. "No, if I add a bit more, I could rebuild the whole manor." "Rebuild the entire manor? How much more would that take? Where would you get the extra money?" Jessica was skeptical. "The store's dividends from the last 6 months," Roger said. "After distributing 20%, the rest, 80%, is still there. You still need funds in the account for materials, opening branches. How much more do you need?" Jessica relented enough to let him set a budget. 200,000? Roger offered, half unsure. "That only gets us to 500,000. Is that really enough for materials?" Jessica pressed. "I'm not hiring wizard builders. They charge double for pure bloods. I asked Andrew for blueprints from Muggle architects, and we can buy materials from Muggles. Pay in pounds, save galleons for the bits we absolutely need wizardcraft for." Roger still bristled about a ridiculously high quote he'd been given months ago. At most, we'll hire a few wizards during construction and use some galleons. It's a pity the goblins at Gringotts still have their exchange window closed. Jessica sighed. You caused that, Roger teased. It's a good thing the ministry didn't find out, she replied. And you, no running off during the summer holidays and no shenanigans, understood? Long live Mum, I'll stay in Britain. Roger tapped her forehead. I won't go anywhere. That settled, they returned to the manor. In midsummer, the estate was overgrown and eerily quiet. Roger pushed past vines and opened the main door with a key. Who's there? Speak up, Grandma Annie's voice rang from inside. It's me, Roger. He stepped through a sea of toppled books and frowned. The alarm spells had gone off. Someone had definitely ransacked the place. Little Roger, you're finally back. Torquil's portrait bellowed amid the clutter. We've been robbed by that little thief, Fletcher? You mean Mundungus Fletcher? Roger checked. So many books were missing, he couldn't tell what exactly. Building a proper library suddenly seemed essential. Yes, all the portraits hissed in unison. That fellow's taken a lot and he doesn't stop. He's a repeat offender, Roger said. Time to hit him hard. He had a plan forming. Fletcher wouldn't get away this time. He was going to catch him red-handed. Where would a dark wizard fence stolen goods? Roger asked Grandpa Torquil. Nocturne Alley, right by Diagon Alley, Torquil replied. Half dark, half legal trade. The biggest is Borgin and Burke's, if Borgin's still alive. I always wondered how Principal Black let his daughter marry that cursed hunchback. He is alive, and apparently thriving, Torquil added. Roger squared his shoulders. He'd go to Diagon Alley for a bit, then follow the trail to Nocturne Alley. After a quick flew to the Shadow Apparition shop, he found Sophie hunched over a chessboard. She was trying to animate the painted pieces, but nothing would step out of the pictures. Roger, teach me, she grabbed his arm. This needs alchemy. You only finished Hogwarts a year ago, right? I didn't take alchemy, Roger admitted. You didn't? Sophie feigned outrage. Just help me get the pieces to come alive, or give me the board. I don't even have it with me, he said, annoyed. You promised. Bring it tomorrow. Sophie insisted, and shoved him out the door. It was absurd to see an employee kick the boss out of his own shop, but Sophie pushed him anyway. All right, I'll bring it next time, Roger said as he left. He turned left out of the shop and walked into Nocturne Alley. The contrast with Diagon Alley was immediate. Buildings hunched over the street, paint flaking, windows dark. The air smelled of old potions and damp. Wizards drifted in shabby robes, eyes darting and calculating, all of them looking like they'd been softened at the edges by hard living. Roger felt conspicuously well-dressed and out of place. A child? Well-dressed at that, someone muttered. Hungry smiles curved at the corners of mouths. An old witch named Sheila bent her back and blocked his path. Her face was craggy like bark, her fingers long and clawed. Little one, she croaked and reached for him. The witch's voice turned into a scream. Her right hand, suddenly severed, rolled on the cobbles, blood splattering the alley. She clutched at the stumps of her wrist and keened. Silent casting? Someone whispered. No one had seen a wand raise. The hand had been cut off without a visible spell. The crowd went cold. If it was silent and wandless, it was dark magic, and that made everyone uneasy. It looks like Sheila's right hand can't be reattached, someone else said, voice shaking. A dark wizard at the edge of the crowd grinned and gave chase after the fleeing thief. Whatever had happened, someone had made a clean escape. Roger just stood, watching, his expression steady. His calm made the others avert their eyes. In Nocturne Alley, strength commanded respect. People weaved aside for him. Borgin and Burke's looked like any other cramped shop from the outside. A narrow door, a tight counter. But inside the shelves were macabre and unmistakable. A hand of glory, blood-stained playing cards, shrunken heads, and bones whose purpose no one wanted to ask about. "Young Master Travis, welcome, welcome," called the shopkeeper from behind the counter, his greasy hair slicked down. He smiled with teeth like old coins. Roger allowed himself a small smile. He stepped forward into the dim shop, every muscle ready. There were answers to be found in places like this, and he wasn't leaving until he'd found them. Chapter 103, Nocturne Alley. "Look at you, young Master Travis. Your shop is just off Nocturne Alley. We're practically neighbors," Bojin said, smooth as silk. "Neighbors? We're distant neighbors, Rogge snapped, slapping the table and fixing Bojin with a stare. Since we're neighbors, shouldn't we help each other? Fletcher. Does that name ring any bells? Fletcher? Bojin murmured, feigning thought. I know a lot of Fletchers. Which one offended you? Mundungus Fletcher? A thief. I haven't met him, but he's infamous enough in the underworld. You can't say you're unfamiliar with him, can you? Rogge raised an eyebrow like an interrogator. Oh, your rhetoric is grand, Bojin laughed uneasily, shaking his head. My shop is above ground. How can you speak of an underground world? He denied it flatly. The Fletcher you mention, I haven't seen him in a long time. A long time? Rogge scoffed. Bojin's answer was artful, clearing himself while leaving a loophole. Funny, then, that I heard he's one of your secret suppliers. Slander. Absolute slander. Bojin protested, shouting indignantly. Young Master Travis. Just call me Rogge. Rogge cut him off. All right, Mr. Rogge. Bojin nodded, swearing to the light himself. My shop has been doing honest business for generations. Legitimate trade, nothing shady. We would never deal with lawless types. Rogge seemed amused at Bojin's brazen denial. He picked up the hand of glory and sneered, This light can only be seen by the wielder. Don't you find that peculiar? Peculiar? Of course. Bojin didn't try to argue. I thought it was odd when I got it. What use is a magic item that only lights for one person? He was clearly playing ignorant, even offering to sell it. Magical items are strange things. I don't claim to recognize them all. If you're interested, I could sell you the Hand of Glory. 10 galleons. A bargain. 10 galleons? Not much. Rogge replaced the object and his tone turned cold. Tell me, how much would it cost to turn Fletcher's hand into something like this? How would I know that? I'm just a legitimate merchant. That's two. Bojin searched for the right word. Advanced. Yes, too advanced. I really don't know. He avoided the name Fletcher. That was a supplier he'd known for years, an old contact who'd supplied good merchandise. He couldn't easily betray him. Rogge, however, pressed on, not missing a beat. If I asked an Auror to pay your shop a visit, what would you say? Is your business even registered with the ministry? Before Bojin could answer, Rogge raised the stakes. I've heard a rumor recently that your former assistant became a wizard of great renown, dominating the magical scene. Bojin's face went pale. Cold sweat beaded at his temple. Not many people knew about Tom the Wizard. How had Rogge found out? Instinctively, his hand went to his sleeve. Rogge noticed and aimed his wand at his head. Why is this necessary, young Master Travis? Bojin blurted, then immediately raised both hands and softened his voice. I'm a humble merchant. My eyes fail me sometimes. I acquire things of uncertain origin. Heh, uncertain origin? Rogge mocked. Things stolen from our family turn up with you, and then vanish to parts unknown. You mean that? Young Master Travis, that was nearly 10 years ago. Weren't you in Azkaban? Away then? The magical world was in chaos. Who had time to investigate? Bojin tried to blame the last war, hoping it would excuse anything. People come and people go in a shop. Over time you hear things, Rogge said, eyes hard. And Fletcher? Rogge pressed. Bojin realized Rogge had come for Fletcher and hurried to give what cover he could. Oh, him. Right, that fellow always had bloodshot, bulging eyes like a toad. He smoked foul tobacco and smelled terrible. I'm not here for a portrait, Rogge interrupted. Say something useful. All right, young Master Travis. Bojin launched into Fletcher's background. In his younger days, he was a swindler and a rogue, but with good connections, he did well in the underground. Ask him for information, and he always found it, and it was usually right. He was useful then. Rogge nodded. No wonder Fletcher had slipped through the ministry's grasp for years. I told him back then to give up petty thievery and save up to open a pub in Nocturne Alley. With his knack for gathering news, he'd have done well, don't you agree? Bojin watched Rogge's silence and kept talking. But he refused. He wanted to be a rare goods supplier. He even bragged that Albus had taken a liking to him, invited him into the Order of the Phoenix. Albus? Rogge's interest piqued. Dumbledore? Yes, Professor Dumbledore. He told me himself. I didn't believe it at first. Bojin nodded. Order of the Phoenix, can you imagine? He stole from your family and passed things through me. But well, those were hard times. Who could be bothered? Bojin put on the look of a hardened rogue. No money, no remorse. Rogge wasn't buying the act. He recently went to Ireland. He snuck into our old manor and stole some books. Books? Muggle books? Bojin suddenly understood why Rogge had come and tried to explain himself. I told him then they were just muggle books, not worth a single nut. He wouldn't listen. Call him, Rogge instructed. Tell him there's an antique book collector interested in those muggle books. Use your old channels and get him to meet you here. Bojin hesitated. He could have reported Fletcher to the ministry and had him arrested. But 5 galleons suddenly slid onto the counter, gleaming. The offer caught Bojin's eye. Of course, Lord Travis. I mean, Mr. Rogge. Leave it to me. He'll come. Bojin agreed too quickly, staring at the coins. You don't need aurors involved. If they turned up, who knows if your business would survive. I'll give you the money once it's done. Rogge swept his sleeve. The 5 galleons vanished in an instant. Bojin stared at the empty counter for a heartbeat, then hurried off to write the message to Fletcher. At the financial center, Rogge sat on a sofa looking out over London. Andrew stood stiffly beside him, summarizing the last 6 months' performance. Your team's changed a lot in a year, Rogge said, opening a bottle of cola. The familiar fizz and taste calmed him. After the last operation, anyone ambitious got poached, or set up on their own. Better to part ways amicably. Smaller. Rogge went on. Some folks are restless. Take some funds and play with them. Consider it pocket money. I'm giving you decision-making authority up to £100 million. Andrew blinked. 100 million had been an unthinkable sum a year ago. Now it barely registered. Understood, sir. Don't get too deep into it. Russian credit isn't worth the paper it's printed on, Rogge warned. Andrew frowned. What do you mean? What if they seize your assets? What would you do then? How would that happen? Andrew protested. He'd lived and breathed the markets. Other large consortiums were already operating in Moscow. Chapter 1 of 4, Supplier of Curious Treasures. Roger flicked his teacup and it snapped into the shape of a pistol. He leveled it at Andrew and grinned. Tell me, if I were going to rob you, would it make any difference who you are? Andrew chuckled and nodded. Even the richest men were afraid of death. Still, a sliver of hope lingered in his voice. Do they really dare cross so many financial houses? Heh, making money isn't shameful, Roger sneered. Andrew wiped the sweat from his brow. If Moscow counted as a large, armed financial consortium, doing something brazen there suddenly seemed plausible. Roger spun the little pistol in his hand, amused by the thought of collecting a few more revolvers. Dual-wielding cowboy wizard had a certain appeal. All right, how are the designs I asked for coming along? He asked. I had 10 studios revise them according to your last brief. The design files and physical models are back. They're just waiting on your decision. Andrew clapped his hands, and a secretary brought in boxes of documents. Roger noticed the assistants were blonde and long-legged, very much Andrew's taste. Their suntans puzzled him, though. These are the proposals, floor plans, 3D renderings, specifications. Andrew began. Those are engineering concerns. Where are the physical models? Roger cut in. Wizards didn't need the same level of practicality Muggles did when building houses. With magic, you could add wings and rooms at whim. You didn't have to worry whether a structure was entirely sensible. That freedom left a lot of magical houses crooked and ugly. The models are a bit large. They're in the other conference room. Let's go, Roger said, and they moved down the hall to a larger cleared room. 10 estate models were laid out on tables, each waiting for inspection. Roger walked slowly past them, pausing to examine and sometimes to touch. Muggle designs felt more mature and practical than most wizard designs. Because Muggles lacked magic, everything had to be decided on paper. Remove all the flashy nonsense, Roger said, pointing at a few models dominated by oversized gardens. He hated ostentation and wasted maintenance. Rather than have the house elf spend hours tending endless lawns, build a greenhouse and plant a few useful magical specimens, Chinese chomping cabbages, for instance. Is this Gothic? He asked. Andrew brightened. Yes, Gothic uses pointed arches, slender spires, stained glass, and emphasizes vertical space and expansive interiors. But it's old-fashioned. Victorian suits pure-blood families better. He led Roger to another model. Victorian emphasizes horizontal lines, symmetry, and elaborate ornamentation, borrowing Romanesque and Gothic motifs. No, too enclosed. Roger preferred wide, light interiors with generous daylight. Take those two styles out. Which studio did this one? He pointed to a model with clean, simple lines and an interior that felt grand and imaginative. The main house was 4 stories of stone with a high central dome and symmetrical wings. Ornate stone columns led to the entrance, and Roman columns supported an arched portico. Inside, the Baroque flourishes were exactly the kind of lavish detail Jessica liked. Furniture heavy with carving, a double open main staircase with finely crafted balustrades, a reception hall ceiling left as a space for murals that might be augmented with illusion magic. Unusually, the design also incorporated modern elements, glass curtain walls and steel used on parts of the structure to make the restaurant areas more transparent and open. Beyond a lake bridge behind the main building sat a separate library building, like a giant clamshell resting in the water. Inside the library, a white circular core rose in layered rings like staircases of knowledge. A central sphere ran through it, evoking a planet and its rings. Bright, grand, and easy to expand, the sphere could become a private reading room, for example. It suited Roger's tastes. "This is from the Dutch Ome office," Andrew said. "Founded by Rem Koolhaas, they've been around for over 10 years. This is the one. I like it overall, but I want bolder imagination in places. Don't make them worry about implementation. They're designers, not engineers. And I want a few glass structures for greenhouses." Roger smiled. "Most of the buildings should be practical, though. A small number can be for artistic effect." "Understood." Andrew took notes. "Timeline?" Roger checked his watch. "1 week? That's tight," Andrew admitted. "But as the client," Roger laughed and extended the deadline after a moment's thought. 2 weeks. The detailed reports can follow. Modify the models first. With magic, building will be quicker." Andrew felt a pang of envy. Magic could do what muggles could not. He was a squib and had to hope his son awakened whatever magic might lie in their blood. "Also, help me acquire a pharmaceutical company in Britain. No special conditions, just somewhere to run some research." "There's Cambridge Medical Company. They're in trouble after a failed clinical trial and are restructuring." Andrew's eyes lit up. Many old contacts had already asked his advice about the restructuring. "How technically strong are they?" "It's been listed in the financial city for 7 years." Andrew began, then realized Roger meant their scientific competence. "I'm not a medical expert. I'll have people look into it right away. As long as it's serviceable, I want a quiet full acquisition. Keep it low profile. Travis Company will take control discreetly. We'll make a fair offer," Andrew promised. "Travis Company?" Roger raised an eyebrow at Andrew, naming the acquisition vehicle after his own family name. "Keep me posted." Not long after, an owl arrived with a letter from Bo Jin. A slightly scrawny bird landed on Roger's balcony and pecked at the owl food. Roger read the letter with a small, barely perceptible smile and watched the owl fly off. "This is a slow way to send messages," he muttered, thinking about developing magical telephones. He had something else to arrange. "Bubble, do you know how to use an instant camera?" "Of course, little master," Bubble said bright-eyed, apparently eager to help. "Good. Come with me to Nocturne Alley this afternoon. When my hands are clasped, you start taking pictures." Roger handed the magical instant camera to Bubble, and they went to Bo Jin's shop. The shop was as grimy as ever. Behind the counter, a portly, bearded wizard chatted with Bo Jin, while Bo Jin kept an anxious eye on him, as if worried the fellow would pocket something. "Young Master Travis, you're here?" Bo Jin called out on seeing Roger. "Huh, Travis?" The bearded wizard frowned. The name rang a bell. Roger stepped forward and smiled. "This must be the supplier of curious treasures you mentioned, the infamous Mr. Mundungus Fletcher?" He folded his hands in anticipation as he looked at the bow-legged, shabby man. "Of course I'm Fletcher," the man declared, chest puffed with pride. "You won't find another supplier of rare treasures like me in the magical world." "Really? I heard Bo Jin say you have some muggle books," Rogge said. "Are they very old?" Fletcher glanced at Bo Jin and grinned. Of course his old friend could make ordinary muggle books sound like priceless antiquities. Yes, look at these. Gilded titles, ornate bindings." He set a stack of books on the counter and, with a practiced flourish, introduced them to Rogge. "Don't be fooled by appearances. They're muggle books, but ancient. Their knowledge and cultural value are unmatched, perfect for a collector's display." He smiled to reveal uneven yellow teeth. He'd asked around and learned the books were only elaborately decorated. If Bo Jin hadn't said a collector was interested, he would have thrown them out. Still, Fletcher kept selling the story. "May I look at them?" Rogge asked. "Of course. These are only a small selection. If you want more, I have plenty," Fletcher said, casting a furtive glance. He thought of the wealth of pure-blood families and the bargains to be made. Rogge flipped through the books with casual motions, though he already knew their provenance. "How much do you want for them, Mr. Fletcher?" "1 sickle each," Fletcher said quickly. "A steal. Look at the gilding, the exquisite bindings." Rogge snapped a book shut and fixed him with a hard stare. "Where did these come from, Mr. Fletcher? Were they stolen?" "Muggles, what are you talking about?" Fletcher protested loudly, feigning offense. "I am a respectable wizard, a purveyor of rare treasures. I would never steal. I painstakingly collected them from various places in the magical world. Bojin can vouch for me." "Is that so?" Rogge's voice grew colder. "My family says you've been raiding our manor, took anything that wasn't bolted down." Recognition flashed across Fletcher's face. You are Travis." He had frequented that decrepit old manor. The books had been taken recently. "Damn you, Bojin, you set me up," he snarled. His eyes glittered with anger, as if he wanted to curse Bojin on the spot. "Do dark wizards have any honor? Mr. Fletcher, we're going to the Ministry of Magic." Rogge drew his wand and slowed the motion deliberately. Fletcher's face fell. "Apparition!" he cried and vanished from the shop. "You had him," Bojin said, puzzled, taking the galleons Rogge had already handed him. "Why let him go?" "No rush," Rogge said with a smile. "Let him run for a while." He met Bojin's hopeful look and posed a question as if idly curious. "If I offer a reward of 10,000 galleons, how long could he stay on the run?" 10,000! Bojin's eyes lit up, and his body hunched forward like a man who'd been offered a feast. "Name the price, and I'll have him tonight." Rogge strolled around the cramped shop, examining the wares with casual interest. "I didn't realize you were so confident, Bojin. You really can find him?" "Ha ha ha! This is my rare treasure supplier," Bojin crowed. "I know him better than you can imagine. You'll see." He rubbed his hands together at the thought of the reward. "No rush. The money will be paid. I look forward to our cooperation." "Likewise," Rogge said, stopping in front of a strand of opals. He liked how the name opal sounded, pretentious and expensive. Bojin seized the opportunity. "This is a rare piece," he said. "Top-grade opals, pure and elegant. It even has a mysterious curse." He pointed to the tag. "It's already claimed 19 Muggle lives." "A curse?" Rogge raised an eyebrow. "Aren't you afraid writing that will put people off?" "No, people buy it because of the curse. It's the sort of dark novelty collectors want," Bojin said. "Even brief contact sends a wizard to St. Mungo's. Long exposure. Who can say? If you want it, I'll give a discount." Rogge shook his head. "I can't imagine anyone would wear something like that all day." Bojin blinked, confused by how lightly Rogge treated the supposed curse. Rogge moved on to a black iron cabinet with a carved Saint Maria on the door. "This is a medieval Iron Maiden," Bojin announced, opening it to demonstrate. "Used for cruel punishments. Someone locked inside would be pierced by spikes, slow, terrible death." He imitated the screech of iron and the sounds of agony with a macabre grin. Rogge touched the cabinet door and frowned. "There are no spikes," he said. "Iron Maidens were mostly intimidation devices. There's no record they were used for executions. I don't sense any magic. This is a medieval Muggle artifact." "Young Master Travis, you're right, but it's an antique." Bojin pivoted, eyes darting to the room as he improvised. "A collectible, perfect for displaying your family lineage. It shows a wizard's openness to Muggle culture. Very meaningful." "Since it's an antique," Rogge said flatly, "can I pay in pounds?" Bojin froze. Muggle currency had been useful last year, but lately it was barely worth the paper. He flailed for a price. 10, 5, no 6, 8. 8 galleons. That's all." He muttered numbers like a desperate man and finally named what he thought Rogge would accept. "Take it," Rogge said immediately, unbothered. He slapped a handful of galleons into Bojin's palm without haggling. Bojin's face fell. He knew he'd been outplayed. There had to be more to the cabinet than met the eye. "What's it for?" Bojin asked, trying to pry a secret out of him. "Decoration," Rogge said, the same dismissive excuse he'd given earlier. He wasn't going to tell Bojin that the cabinet was a vanishing cabinet or that it could be used to reach Hogwarts. Bojin left the transaction satisfied enough and a little put out. "Bubble, Take the cabinet back, Rogue said. In the blink of an eye, a house elf materialized from invisibility. It bowed respectfully, took the cabinet, and vanished as cleanly as it had come. A house elf? Here the whole time? Bojin stared after Rogue, absently rubbing the coins in his fingers. He felt a chill of jealousy. Rogue had help he didn't understand. Bubble would be busy tending a London household and sometimes assisting at Hogwarts. It was an efficient, unnoticed aid. Bojin recalled his own observations. The shadow apparition shop in the alley did brisk business. He'd once staked it out and calculated daily sales of no less than 50 galleons and more when a wealthy buyer appeared. Britain wasn't even the main market. Europe and the Americas were where the big money was. Rogue had the look of a big spender, and the way he moved, decisive and ruthless, was not that of a mere first year. The old witch Sheila had tried to ambush him and ended up losing her hand. That Rogue moved with such caution and traveled with a house elf only confirmed his suspicions. Sighing, Bojin slid the galleons into a box, then pulled on a grotesque old man mask. "Old fellow," he murmured, imagining the reward in his pocket, "you're worth 10,000 galleons. How can I not love you?" He fitted the mask to his face and became a thin old wizard, ready to go after Fletcher. Chapter 16, Aging Fox. Order of the Phoenix member? Rogge set the magic photograph on the table. Without a flash, the picture was grainy and black and white, but clear enough to show what he and Fletcher had been arguing about. Modern magic pictures had no sound. With a little zooming, they could even guess what someone was saying by the shape of their mouth. "I hope the headmaster is still at Hogwarts," Rogge said carefully, then slipped the photograph back into his pocket and vanished into the fireplace. Some of Hogwarts's hearths were linked to the Floo network. He emerged from a nearly deserted grate, shook the soot from his shoulders, and sneezed. "Rogge, what are you doing here?" Severus looked up from a pile of potions notes, surprised at the sudden arrival. "Professor, is the headmaster in his office? There's something I need to confirm." Rogge pushed the photograph across the table and briefly told the story. Severus set the picture down and frowned. "He's just a common thief. Why bring this to the headmaster? You could go to the ministry. The Aurors would handle him." "Professor, Fletcher claimed he was in the Order of the Phoenix, that the headmaster personally invited him. I don't believe him, but what if he's telling the truth?" Severus repeated the name quietly. The order Dumbledore had formed had been crucial in the fight against you-know-who, but Severus did not know every member by sight. "You're likely overreacting," he said. "A thief will say anything to boast. But if you're worried, the headmaster is at Hogwarts. Come with me." Straightening his robes, he led Rogge toward the headmaster's office, turning the claim over in his mind. A thief who could claim membership in the order, if there was any truth to it, Dumbledore might be wise to know. An ugly stone gargoyle barred the way to the circular stair. Severus muttered the headmaster's favorite confection as the password, lemon sherbet. The gargoyle moved aside to reveal the spiraling staircase. "After you," Severus said. Rogge was on his first visit to the headmaster's office. The door was oak, a brass knocker shaped like a hippogriff. Dumbledore looked up from his quill behind the wide desk, spectacles perched on his nose. "Severus, is something the matter?" He smiled when he saw Rogge. "Why? And Rogge as well. Surely it is the summer holidays." "Albus," Severus said. "Rogge says he encountered a wizard claiming to be a member of the Order of the Phoenix." Rogge watched Fawkes, the great phoenix, perched on a gilded stand. The bird looked small and tired, feathers ragged and its movements slow. Order of the Phoenix? Dumbledore's expression shifted at the name. He had indeed once invited Mundungus Fletcher to join the order during the war. Rogge launched into his complaint. "He's a thief, short and fat, bow-legged, sloppy, and he stinks. He's been coming to steal from my house while it's empty. I finally fixed the protections at Christmas, and he still came in." At the first words, Dumbledore had known exactly whom Rogge meant. He took off his spectacles, listening as Rogge laid out the photographs. Evidence of Fletcher preparing goods for sale, and pointed to a letter that appeared to be for the school board. "If he hadn't claimed to be in the order," Rogge went on, "I'd have put up a bounty. Since you know him, could you speak to him?" Dumbledore thumbed through the photos and shook his head with a small, regretful smile. "Ah, Fletcher. I did invite him to help during the war. He looked at Rogge kindly. Child, you can report him to the ministry. Let the law take its course. No, Rogge protested. They're too slow. If that worked, Fletcher would already have been punished. He brightened. Do you think 10,000 galleons would catch him? That's quite a sum, Dumbledore said slowly. Severus noticed Rogge's eager expression and, in a clipped tone, added, My family business is doing well. Our products are popular. Dumbledore considered the offer. 10,000 is a great deal of money, but he is odious. When you repair your house, strengthen the protections, something like Gringotts. Gringotts' defenses were not perfect, but they had held for centuries, Dumbledore sighed. The strongest defense is a guarded heart. Fletcher never resists his appetites. That is why he never reforms. I tried to guide him once, but I cannot make a man change. Do what you must, but do not burden yourself with guilt. Thank you, Headmaster. I'll post the bounty. Rogge nodded, relieved. Severus watched him go, then fell silent for a moment before asking, Albus, is there trouble with the budget for the new year? Dumbledore's face clouded. It is not good. I have been consumed with it. He looked tired. The 12 school governors are all pure-blood families, still led by the House of Malfoy. They and I have very different ideas on education. Every meeting ends in dispute. I should be grateful to Rogge, in a way. The first-year results are excellent. It gives me something to argue with the governors about. His smile was wry. Lucius Malfoy, however, insists student achievement comes solely from home, not from the school. Severus's mouth tightened. The governors have curtailed donations, and the ministry has cut our funding by 30%. Fawkes ruffled and shed a few limp feathers. 30%! Severus snarled under his breath at the thought of Cornelius Fudge. That fat little man had always feared Dumbledore. Constantly, he had looked for ways either to undermine or to curry favor. Hogwarts had been kept afloat by Dumbledore's efforts despite the squeeze. The decline had already begun. Standards were sliding. I could brew potions to make up the shortfall, Severus offered. No, Dumbledore interrupted. Potions might help in the short term, but they treat symptoms, not the cause. Severus's jaw set. What if we replaced Malfoy on the board? Many governors would be willing to donate more if he were not leading them. A thinly cold light entered his eyes. When he was a Death Eater, he kept many dark artifacts for you-know-who. If the ministry were to conduct a thorough investigation. Replace him? Dumbledore folded his hands and considered. That would be difficult. House Malfoy's influence runs deep. We would need a reasonable cause to persuade the other governors. As soon as those things are found, the ministry will act, Severus said, voice steady and hard. Then the other governors would have every reason to remove him. Dumbledore looked at Severus for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Whoever fills the vacancy would be better than the present situation, he agreed quietly. Chapter 107, Cliffs of Dover. The dim interior of a little wizarding pub in the north of England offered discreet shelter to visiting witches and wizards. Fletcher sat in a shadowed corner, nursing a beer and lifting his head now and then to scan the room. An owl parachuted in, fluttering clumsily to a table. Fletcher opened the letter it carried, read it, then pulled his hood up and melted into the darkness. No sooner had he gone than someone climbed out of the fireplace in a puff of ash, whispering excitedly, "Have you heard? The Travis family has posted a bounty." A bounty? Heads turned. How much? 10,000 galleons for Fletcher. Fletcher, that rare artifacts dealer? Ha! Dealer my foot, he's a thief. A dark-clad wizard who knew Fletcher scoffed, glancing toward the empty table where Fletcher usually sat. Since when was he worth so much? Only an oak beer mug remained on the table. The gossip spread like quicksilver. I heard it's true. I didn't expect Fletcher to steal something that valuable. Good treasures ought to be shared, another wizard said with a sneer. Word spread fast. Those who knew Fletcher joined the hunt, following whatever scraps of information they had. The white cliffs of Dover rose like a blade along the coast, their sheer faces smoothed white as bone, the sea thundering below. A man in ragged black clothes leaned on a stick near the cliff edge. A rusty iron bucket sat at his feet. He looked every inch a beggar, though there was no one on the empty cliff to beg from. "Quick, Martin, get me out of here." Fletcher came running, clutching the man's sleeve. He'd been named and shamed across the whole British wizarding community. Even the underground had put a price on him. Official flu use or port keys were out of the question, and legal travel documents were impossible to obtain. His only hope was Martin, an old friend with an unregistered port key. Martin smiled like a man who'd been waiting. He murmured the charm, "Point and go," and patted Fletcher's shoulder. "1 minute to departure. Don't panic." "Can it be quicker?" Fletcher looked at the iron bucket as if he could scoop it up and vanish. "This is as fast as it gets," Martin said. "But you pay first. Here, 30 galleons. Fletcher fished out a battered wallet. Martin didn't take it. "It's not 30. Martin brushed Fletcher's hand away and murmured coldly, 30 for the fare, 20 for secrecy, and 5,000 for hiding you from bounty hunters." "You want what?" Fletcher shouted, drawing his wand. Martin's face didn't change. "So you owe me 5,050 galleons," Fletcher gaped. "How did you know there's a bounty?" A familiar voice came from behind. Bojin stepped out of invisibility, mask removed, his features set in that thin smile Fletcher knew too well. "Don't forget, I introduced you to Martin." You betrayed me," Fletcher shouted, raising his wand as if to kill. Bojin's voice was soft, almost amused. "Betrayal? Fletcher, we're old friends." He adopted the honeyed tone of a merchant trying to calm a difficult customer. "Put down your wand and come with me. Once the legalities are dealt with, you'll have your freedom. I'll even give you 2,000 galleons compensation for your troubles. Think of it as preserving our friendship." "Keep your charity," Fletcher hissed. "If I wanted the money, I'd turn myself into Rogge and take the full 10,000. Bojin shrugged, and with the easy confidence of someone who'd done this before, flicked a spell from his sleeve. "Expelliarmus." Fletcher answered without hesitation, and the two exchanged curses and hexes, fast, noisy, and a little clumsy. It looked impressive, but up close it was two amateurs squabbling like stray dogs. Martin watched, exasperated. Then, with a single move that betrayed long-practiced skill, he slipped behind Fletcher and knocked him unconscious with a blunt strike. "You should have helped me sooner," Bojin panted, exhausted from adrenaline he hadn't felt in years. He bound Fletcher in tight cords until he looked like a human pretzel. "Help you?" Martin said, tapping the ground with his stick. "It would ruin my reputation. Business would suffer." "Business?" Bojin barked a harsh laugh. He pointed to the iron bucket and then produced a bulging pouch of coins, flinging it onto the ground. That pile of money was half the bounty. Martin had demanded payment up front. "I shouldn't have let you interfere," Bojin snapped, putting a hood over Fletcher's head and kicking him twice for good measure. "If I hadn't stepped in, who knows how long you'd have kept this up." Martin shook his head as if he had seen every kind of reckless wizard, and then some. Bojin, relieved and annoyed at the same time, hoisted Fletcher into a sack, carried him back to his shop, and locked him in the basement. With the whole wizarding world hunting Fletcher, even Diagon Alley wasn't safe. Aurors or bounty hunters could show up at any moment. For the sake of his business reputation, Bojin scrubbed off his rough clothes, changed into something respectable, and pushed open the door of the Shadow Apparition House. The bell over the door chimed clearly. A bright parrot perched on a wooden stand above the counter ruffled its feathers and chirped, "Welcome, welcome." "Lingua, good bird, here's a treat." Sophie, the shop assistant, held out a snack. The parrot fluttered happily and took it. "Is young Master Travis in?" Bojin took in the shop with hungry eyes. It was spacious, well lit, cameras and lenses gleamed. Customers stood in a neat line, inspecting golem paper and developing fluid, wallets open. "Those grips are made of dragon hide? Fancy." Bojin clicked his tongue at the price tags and felt suddenly poor. Even the most basic camera was extravagant. The lenses were beyond his imagination. Sophie's initial friendliness turned to caution when she recognized him. "Mr. Bojin?" she asked, uneasily reaching for her wand for the first time. Bojin raised his hands in an exaggerated show of peace. "Miss, I mean no harm," he said, offering a smile that was supposed to seem warm. It only made Sophie tighten her grip on her wand. Thanks to reader 40 years as a butcher's knife for the reward. Chapter 108, Generous Borgin. "Don't be afraid. I'm here to collect the bounty," Bojin announced, making his purpose plain. He'd already paid 5,000 galleons in advance and wanted the reward settled as quickly as possible. "The wanted thief?" Sophie raised an eyebrow, appraising him. Exactly. That's him. It took me ages to catch that fellow. Please get Mr. Roger on the line right away. He's a slippery one. I'm afraid he'll find a chance to escape. Bojin's tone carried a polite flattery that put Sophie at ease. All right, give me a moment. Sophie picked up the antique phone on the table, her fingers brushing the warm brass decorations. Roger had sent it a few days ago, an alchemical model, not entirely reliable, but it could reach his villa by the Thames when nothing else would. What is that? Miss, the Flu network would be faster, Bojin said, puzzled. The phone's receiver curved on a transparent cord like a swan's neck. Its casing looked muggle, but Sophie had said the innards were transformed by alchemy. Heh! Sophie imitated Roger under her breath and rolled her eyes. It's not even as dependable as muggle phones from decades ago. She turned the dial and had to pause to reset it more than once. Hello, Roger? Can you hear me? Crackling answered her into the receiver. Hello? What did you say? The line was thin and distant. Sophie raised her voice, still struggling to make herself heard. Okay, I understand. Tell him to wait a moment. Sophie nodded and hung up. Roger's in the financial city. He won't be back for half an hour. You can rest over there. She pointed to a corner where a soft velvet sofa sat, plush and more comfortable than most wizard beds. Thank you. What sort of magical item is that? Bojin's curiosity showed. He had an eye for things that might become business opportunities. A telephone. Muggles had them a long time ago, probably invented over 100 years back. This one's been altered by Roger with alchemy. It can make long-distance calls, but the connection's unstable and it often drops. A magic telephone? Gold flecked in Bojin's gaze. He reached out instinctively. It'd be so much more convenient than owls or paper airplanes, could I? No. Sophie snapped the receiver back and crossed her arms, guarding it as if it might be snatched. Please sit. I'll get some refreshments. And Mr. Bojin, there are strict alarm spells in the shop. Be careful. Bojin made an odd smile. He wasn't a common thief. He was a businessman. These young ladies today, all looks. He sat, fingers smoothing his hair as he thought of his wife, the former principal's daughter, and wondered if his charm had faded. He let his eyes roam over the expensive items in the room. The business of illicit magic was risky and low margin. Auror inspections were always a worry. The idea of the telephone, though, thrilled him. Instant contact across distance. Who would pay for slow old owls after this? Sorry I'm late. Roger and Senior Auror Dolores appeared from the fireplace, Roger ruffling his robes. Had to check on that ruin of a house in Ireland. Finally settled on a design, but finding a construction crew and suppliers is the headache. Wizard construction teams cost a fortune, Roger complained, and shipping stone from Italy takes 3 years. He introduced the Auror beside him. This is Senior Auror Dolores. Bojin's face tightened. Roger made a calming gesture. Dolores, didn't I say people from Nocturne Alley can be useful? They can always come up with what you need. Dolores lounged on the sofa with professional indifference. I didn't expect Fletcher to be caught so quickly. If Mr. Bojin is offering a service, the galleons better be sufficient. She teased, and Bojin laughed on cue. Everyone, whether Diagon Alley or Nocturne Alley, hates thieves. Bojin's voice grew nervous as his thoughts flicked to the basement and its stash of poisons and dark artifacts. He's in my shop. Bring him out. Roger's prompt gave Bojin an easy out. If an Auror turns up in Nocturne Alley, it'll alarm the whole place. Bojin obliged and heaved the sack containing Fletcher into the room. Roger waved his wand. The sign in the window flipped to closed, and the glass became one-way, an impenetrable screen from the outside. He untied the rope and pulled back Fletcher's hood. Fletcher looked barely awake, struggling fruitlessly. The more he fought, the tighter Bojin's knots became. Roger, no. Young Master Travis, I've already given you the books I stole. Please. Roger's face softened with mock sorrow. Fletcher, I'm not a dark wizard who abuses power. He stepped aside, gesturing to Dolores. This is an Auror. Fletcher went pale. An Auror, he whispered. Of course, Dolores said. The crimes you committed are for the ministry to handle. She spoke evenly. We'll see what you confess under Veritaserum. Veritaserum. Fletcher's voice trembled. No one could face that sort of potion without fear. Dolores hauled him to his feet. Come along, our rare treasure thief. The ministry's been looking for you. Roger, coming with us? Dolores asked. I'd love to. Roger nodded and tossed a heavy money bag toward Bo-jin. Bo-jin snatched it up and counted quickly. Every coin was there. He bowed with exaggerated respect. "Young Master Travis, it's a pleasure to work with you." As Roger prepared to leave, Bo-jin suddenly spoke up, clearing his throat. "About that construction problem you mentioned, I might have an idea." Roger blinked at the unexpected helpfulness. "Oh, tell me." "Wizard construction teams basically use magic to build. If that's the case, you could replace expensive wizards with other magical labor." Bo-jin leaned in, earnest. "House elves, for one. For a manor, you'd need dozens, or even hundreds, but they're devoted workers." Roger's eyes widened. "Even the Malfoys only have a couple of house elves." "For materials," Bo-jin continued, "look to Gringotts." He pointed out the window. "Goblins spend all day excavating. They get tons of gems and material they don't need. That waste should provide plenty of building stone and decorative stonework." "Brilliant," Roger beamed. "You've solved a major headache. I don't know how to thank you." "We're partners and friends." "That's nothing," Bo-jin said, humble and magnanimous in appearance. He stepped toward the door, making no immediate demands. Dolores watched him closely. "Something about him doesn't sit right," she murmured to Roger. Roger nodded. "I'll keep an eye on it." Bo-jin's sudden generosity didn't match his reputation for penny counting. There was likely more to the story, either a scheme or a strategy. Still, the suggestion had been useful, and Roger made a mental note to follow up. With that, Roger and Dolores took Fletcher through the fireplace, and Nocturne Alley returned to its usual shadowed bustle. Chapter 109, Interrogation Room 6. Dolores shoved Fletcher into a temporary holding cell where several dark wizards were already confined. They all turned to size him up with hungry interest. Well, isn't this the famous Fletcher?" A scarred man sneered. "I heard you're with the Order of the Phoenix. What, you got caught too?" "He's a big-time thief, 10,000 galleons on his head," another man said, smirking. "Not like the rest of us." Fletcher said nothing. The men circled him, excitement in their voices. "I remember you stole a vault key 13 years ago and cleaned out a wizard's vault. Is that true?" the scarred man asked. Shame. All that skill and look at you now, caught like a common street rat," mocked a one-eyed wizard with an eye patch. "Come on, big brothers. I'm sure he just borrowed a few muggle books. Is that worth 10,000 galleons?" Fletcher spread his hands and gave a helpless, sheepish smile. "I only borrowed some muggle books," he said. The others exchanged contemptuous looks. No one believed him. "They're looking all over the magical world for me over scrap paper? Tell me that's not right." "Scrap paper," someone scoffed. "Fletcher, what did you really steal?" Fletcher's voice wavered. He hadn't meant for the theft to have consequences like this. "Look, what good would it do to lie? They're making a mountain out of a molehill. They wouldn't even give poor wizards a break." "Did you take something from the Malfoys?" the scarred wizard interrupted, staring. "Malfoy hates muggles. I doubt they'd have muggle books. Either he's lying, or he nicked something else," the one-eyed wizard chuckled. "Or someone just wants to mess with you." "Mess with me?" Fletcher's heart skipped. It was a possibility he hadn't wanted to consider. He was only a petty thief. How bad could this get? He looked the others in the eye and blurted out, "All right, I did take muggle books, but they were from a pure-blood place, Travis Manor. That place has been abandoned ages. Who cares if I picked up a few things from a ruin? Loads of us have been there. Why am I the only one getting pinched?" "Travis?" The one-eyed wizard frowned, trying to place it. "That name rings a bell." "The stuff that happened at Azkaban last year, that's tied to them," said the scarred man, standing as if to stretch. "If it weren't for them, we wouldn't even be in this mess." "I heard Azkaban's better now. No Dementors to worry about," another chimed in. "They opened a shop in Diagon Alley, didn't they?" "Shadow Apparition House," said a voice. "Makes sense now. Fletcher, you saw them making coin and your hands got itchy, didn't they? That's why you went stealing." Fletcher's mouth went dry. They had hit something at the heart of it. He'd thought about it, how easy money looked, but he hadn't expected the fallout. "Don't say that," he muttered. "Don't act like I'm some kind of threat. Just because I had a backer doesn't mean others shouldn't touch me. If they come for you because of them, how long before they come for the Order of the Phoenix?" the scarred man said quietly. The words settled like a stone. Fletcher's smile froze. No, that can't be. The order is disbanded. He barely had time to think before the cell door slammed open. Two aurors ushered him out with brisk efficiency. Mundungus Fletcher? Come on, to interrogation room 6, one said flatly. His cellmates waved, calling after him with crude blessings and laughter that echoed down the corridor. In the interrogation room, the aurors shoved him into a chair and warned him to confess. Fletcher, your complaint records could wallpaper this room, one said, throwing open a nearby cabinet. Files and papers spilled out like dead leaves. Be honest. Answer our questions. No tricks. I don't recall being that bad, Fletcher pleaded, adopting a pitiful expression. Surely it can't be as many. Dolores swept in with Rogge close behind, holding a vial of Veritaserum. It seems you won't be honest unless we encourage you, she said, placing the vial on the table with a smirk. No, ask me. I'll tell you everything. I'll answer without reservation, Fletcher said quickly. Seeing him relent, Dolores pocketed the vial. When did you sneak into Travis Manor? An auror asked, watching him closely. Fletcher fumbled for an excuse. I can't remember exact dates. I move around a lot. It's hard to keep track. Don't play dumb. We know what your visits are for stealing, another auror barked, slapping the table. Don't think we don't have ways of finding out. These files go back to 1974. That alone is enough to cause trouble. If you already know, why are you still interrogating me? Just send me straight to the Wizengamot, Fletcher protested. Rogge held Dolores back when she reached for the Veritaserum. Don't rush, he said. Let's have a little fun. He scribbled something on a piece of paper and passed it to Dolores. She read, smiled, and handed it to the aurors. The lead interrogator raised an eyebrow but complied. According to our evidence, you were once a member of the Order of the Phoenix, he said. You're talking about the Wizengamot, Fletcher. Are you implying Albus Dumbledore instructed you to steal? You can't say that, Fletcher snapped. That's slander. However, the auror's eyes lit with triumph. When did you join the Order? What does that have to do with me taking things? Fletcher protested, panic threading his voice. The earlier joke about the Order now felt dangerously real. Oh, so you admit you stole. That's something at least, Dolores said. Rogge's gamble was working. Fletcher was starting to fray. The aurors set a thick pile of complaint records on the table in front of him, stacked high enough to make his throat tighten. You say Dumbledore and the Order had nothing to do with this, one auror said, voice cold. Yet during your time in the Order, the Ministry has no complaint records about you at all. I reformed, Fletcher cried. I turned over a new leaf. Don't toy with us, the auror snapped, leaning in. You're either lying about reforming or Dumbledore covered for you. Did Dumbledore help hide your crimes? September 18th. Do not forget history. Let us strive to be stronger. Chapter 110. Unbreakable Oath. No, Fletcher protested loudly. You can't judge me like that. I can be a good person. A hollow laugh went around the room. Everyone but Fletcher joined in. A good person? The aurors chorused. Then explain the blank years on your record after you joined the Order of the Phoenix. The question was sharp. Fletcher had no explanation. During that time, the wizarding world had been in chaos. He had been working for Dumbledore, gathering intelligence. He'd taken the odd trinket while on missions, but who would have cared when everyone was terrified and scrambling? Since you've stopped, how do you explain this? The auror asked, slapping a moving photograph across the table. It showed Fletcher delivering stolen books to Rogge. According to Mr. Rogge's report, these books were delivered to Travis Manor last Christmas. He even put up wards and anti-theft charms. You're not going to tell us the books crawled off the shelves and into your hands, are you? Fletcher wanted to say it was possible. The protections at Travis Manor had been laughably weak, but he hesitated. Someone gave them to me, he said finally, but his guilt was obvious. Fletcher, are you sure? The auror leaned back, let him squirm. Fletcher knew the question was a trap. They must have proof beyond the photograph. If his lies were exposed, his confessions would be worthless, and the aurors would have the leverage to implicate Dumbledore and the Order. Can I have a glass of water? Fletcher managed, forcing a weak smile. He downed the ice water and, defeated, said, Fine. I admit I stole those books. Wouldn't it have been easier to confess earlier? The auror said, satisfied, and motioned for Fletcher to continue. Anything else? Other things? Let me think. Fletcher decided to cooperate. He confessed to a string of thefts, a diamond necklace, a bottle of yew perfume, a handwritten spellbook. A quill scratched rapidly as the oars recorded his admissions. Dolores watched, uneasy, then cut in. Don't try to play games with us, Fletcher. Lord Dolores, Fletcher began, frowning, keeping himself composed. Don't play dumb. From 1974 to 1981, what were you doing? Did Dumbledore order you to steal? How much was the order compensating you? At that time, to fight you-know-who, I gave up my career, my hobbies. Fletcher's voice grew earnest. He was our enemy. Even as a petty thief, I resisted him. Feed him Veritaserum. Dolores slammed the table. If he'd take it, the truth would come out. 3 drops of Veritaserum could make even the most guarded wizard answer everything. The ministry's rules limited its use, but Fletcher was a despicable offender. They could justify it. They administered the potion. Fletcher trembled. His eyes went vacant. Under Dolores's direction, the Aurors pressed him for details. He started small, stolen sweets, then larger thefts. Anything he wanted that he didn't have, he'd slipped into his pocket. The quill didn't stop, piling up pages of confession. Rogge watched and sighed at Fletcher's professionalism of a different sort. To steal so many things, you'd have to be very dedicated, he murmured. We knew he was a career thief, a notorious scoundrel on the wrong side of the law, but not to this degree. Thank goodness we caught him, Dolores said, though suspicion lingered. Fletcher, you couldn't even spare a marshmallow from a 3-year-old muggle. With constant thievery like that, where did all the proceeds go? All sold, Fletcher answered. And the money? Dolores pressed. Fletcher's body began to shake violently. Gave, he whispered, and then fell silent. His head slumped. He was gone. Fletcher! Dolores checked the room in a panic with her wand and found nothing to explain it. Rogge looked at the body with an expression that had gone solemn. What secret had Fletcher died protecting? If it's magic, the only possibility is an unbreakable vow, Rogge said. Dolores gripped the vial of Veritaserum. The potion was useless against a vow. You get a corpse instead of the truth. Handle the body, go to the Auror office, issue a death certificate, treat it as suicide brought on by guilt, Dolores ordered. That won't do, Rogge said, shaking his head and indicating the evidence arrayed around the table. They had no reason to take blame for what had happened. Dolores, we haven't done anything wrong. If there's trouble, it's only that my presence as an observer isn't entirely by the book. Rogge, Fletcher was once in the Order of the Phoenix. Let me finish. Rogge waved her off. He had a plan. He died during a routine interrogation. We can't be held responsible. Absolutely do not tamper with the body. If the Wizengamot investigates, it will be hard to explain any alterations. You have the Auror office file a criminal report on Fletcher and send these confessions to Anderson, he continued. Anderson? The Department of Finance? How can they help? Dolores asked. Have him estimate the value of the stolen goods, inflate the numbers if you have to, and pass everything to Fudge. The minister? Dolores leaned in, whispering conspiratorially. He hates taking responsibility. Exactly. That's why this will work. Rogue's voice was steady. Fudge fears duty because duty leads to mistakes. Mistakes put his position at risk. He'll panic when presented with evidence of massive thefts funding a secret organization. Give him reasons to be afraid. Dolores thought it over and nodded. It was a strategy she understood. Present facts, not conclusions. Let the minister stitch the story together himself. If Fudge wanted a scapegoat, he would make one, likely rewarding those who brought him the evidence. Dolores had always privately despised the minister's incompetence, but now she saw how useful his cowardice could be. You're right, she said. We're humble Aurors. The minister makes the decisions. She motioned for subordinates to secure Fletcher's body and all evidence, hoping something explosive would come of the inquiry. If the investigation uncovered a link to a shadowy organization, it could be very entertaining. Be careful, Rogge added. This involves the Order of the Phoenix. If Fudge turns on you, use the Daily Prophet. Leak a document to someone like Rita. The name hung in the air. The thought of letting Rita Skeeter loose on a story was an effective threat. Dolores understood immediately and felt a surge of gratitude. She now understood why Anderson had repeatedly recommended Rogge. Calm, clever, politically aware, he played by the rules and knew how to push them. Rogue, she said with a faint, calculating smile. Want to see your Uncle Buck? I can get you a special pass to Azkaban. Chapter 111. Hello, Buck. Special pass? Roger sounded surprised. Since when did Azkaban get so humane? I remember it used to need special approval. Look at you. Our dear minister can still do some good things, Dolores said approvingly. It's not freeing prisoners, just providing some basic guarantees. No one will object, and it's a chance for him to burnish his reputation. He'll get praise and support. Why not? When he retires, he'll at least have something to brag about in his memoirs. Dolores laughed. It was the only real political triumph Fudge had managed. Roger felt a mix of irritation and reluctant amusement. He had never met his Uncle Buck, but blood was blood. Feelings were complicated. I understand. That man's stubborn. He killed the McKinnon family. Dolores nodded and muttered that Fletcher was a member of the Order of the Phoenix. Look at Lucius, she went on. When he was a Death Eater, he did just enough to keep his hands clean. He reaped the benefits. The dark things he did were washed over. After you-know-who fell, he paid a fine and came through untouched. His power wasn't harmed. If anything, he grew stronger from the experience. As a fellow pureblood, she sighed that others were simply foolish. Besides your Uncle Buck, there are Lestranges and the Blacks, all lunatics. Sirius's sister? Roger asked. Yes, Dolores replied. I heard she had an affair with you-know-who. The man had some stomach for that. She smirked and moved on to gossip about Bellatrix's husband, Rodolphus. Roger's thoughts drifted to the vault key Voldemort had once sold him and to goblin runes. Investigations had turned up nothing, but he still felt uneasy. One of Voldemort's Horcruxes had been in the Lestrange vault. How could he have handed the key over so casually? Would he, in Voldemort's place, have done that? The thought of being controlled by a Horcrux crossed his mind. Then he shook his head. He wasn't you-know-who. He couldn't fathom such plans. Compared to Buck, though, Bellatrix was more directly dangerous. Her wand would lead straight to the vault. Are these rumors of yours true? He asked. Suspicion had been hanging in the air for a while. Hearing Dolores outline it aloud was still unsettling. Who knows, she said. Aurors pick up strange things. I heard Rodolphus is infertile. Anyway, do you want me to apply for a pass for you? Roger thought for a moment. Can the pass let me see more than one person? Usually it's one visit per pass, but a special pass can be unrestricted. Dolores signed the pass herself. The sky over the North Sea was leaden and low. Dense clouds stole the sunlight and pressed a dull weight into the air. Azkaban rose from the boiling black water like an immovable reef. Zone Z? The white-haired administrator peered at Roger, confirming the pass again. Surprise and doubt lined his face. He hadn't expected a young wizard like Roger to request the highest security sections, where the most fanatical of you-know-who's followers were kept. Your wand, little wizard. The administrator registered his details and locked Roger's wand away. A probationary Auror named Jack escorted him through the fortress, silent as he led him in. The layout has changed, Roger murmured as they walked. It's been like this since I arrived, Jack said. Have you been here before? I have, but I'm not that familiar with it. The cold air tasted of salt and iron, a smell embedded in every stone of Azkaban. We're going to Zone Z. The dangerous Death Eaters are kept there. Be careful. Jack unlocked the thick black door and they descended. Dim magical candles lit the corridor with a sickly orange glow. The temperature seemed to drop with every step. Roger felt as if they were walking deeper into hell. Thanks. I thought you might call me a Death Eater brat. Humph, who doesn't? Jack said flatly. I come here to see my father every day. Your father's here? Roger asked, surprised. As a young probationary Auror, Jack's future looked promising. Being here daily suggested a very different burden. He's been driven mad by the Dementors, Jack said quietly. I come hoping to see him wake up. Sadness flickered behind his eyes, but no real hope. He led Roger to the lowest level of Z-Zone, where the corridor was a solid wall of heavy black doors. Jack stopped every few steps to unlock a door, then locked it behind them as they moved. Only one door could be open at a time. These doors are linked, Jack explained. If more than one is open at once, Azkaban's defenses will trigger and Dementors will pour from the walls. At the very end, Jack pointed to the last door. The people you want are in Z1 and Z5. He handed Roger a circular bronze disc that hummed faintly, like a key. Regulations prevent me from entering with you. This will lift the shielding magic on the cell doors. Roger slipped inside the detention wing. It was not as black as he'd imagined. Ceiling lanterns threw a weak orange light. Each cell was warded so that, without special tools, no one inside could hear or see out. At Z5, Roger fitted the disc into a narrow groove. The ward shimmered, then faded. The cell door became transparent and colorless, and beyond it lay a gaunt, hollow-eyed figure on a narrow bed. "Buck Aconite?" Roger said softly. Buck startled. The sound of his name seemed foreign, like a memory dredged up from a deep sleep. For a moment, he thought he hallucinated. He blinked and rubbed his eyes, trying to locate the voice. Who are you?" His voice was thin and trembled. He had not spoken in a long time. "Mugwort, Lily of the Valley. Is that how it's pronounced?" Roger recited names from the family tree, hoping to jog something. "Theodore's son? I thought you were dead?" Buck's eyes widened, and he gripped the cell bars, staring as if he might be looking through an apparition. "Dead? Why do you look disappointed? You should thank me. Without me, you wouldn't have such preferential treatment. Only dementors for company." "Preferential treatment?" Buck barked, bitterness cutting through the ramble. "I'm locked down here at the very bottom. No one speaks to me. The dementors hardly ever come." He erupted into a tirade that sounded like it belonged to someone who hadn't spoken in years. Roger had to restrain himself from laughing at the idea that dementors could be a comfort. "All right, enough ranting." Roger interrupted. "Where is the family vault key?" Buck sneered and flopped back onto his bed. "Ha! Knew you weren't here to see me. So the ministry has stripped the family away and you've nothing left?" Buck taunted, hoping to unsettle him. "Buck, watch your attitude." Roger held up his left hand. The family pinky ring flashed in the dim light. "Your and my father's short-sightedness almost drove our name out of the wizarding world. Do you really still have the nerve to hold on to that key?" Roger's voice was cold. "What? Waiting for you-know-who to return?" "Wake up," Buck hissed. "That man is dead." "No, impossible. The master cannot die," Buck cried, suddenly alive with fanaticism. "The vault must serve the master. I will never give it to you. You can give up that idea." Roger watched him for a long breath, the ring warm against his skin, and realized how deep the conviction ran. The argument had only just begun. Chapter 112, Crazy Woman Bella. "Oh, then why didn't he come to save you? You ungrateful wretch," Rogge spat, exasperated. "My master must be gathering his strength. When he returns, he'll rescue me. Those damned half-bloods and muggles." Buck grew more hysterical as he spoke. "Actually, I saw him not long ago," Rogge said suddenly, and Buck froze. "Him? Who?" He stared at Rogge in disbelief, as if those words had conjured his dream deity before him. But Rogge was so young. How could he have seen the master? "No, he said he'd seen him this year." "Who else but that ugly, noseless fellow? He was tricked by Dumbledore again. It's a pity I didn't bring a camera. Then I could have shown you how pathetic he looked. The so-called savior, the boy who lived, chased him off with a single hand. Your master is getting more useless every day. He didn't even bother to draw his wand." Rogge shook his head, brimming with scorn. "Scorn. You. Impossible. You're lying, aren't you?" Buck backed away, pale. He couldn't bear the thought that Lord Voldemort had been defeated by that boy again. "You won't believe it until you hear the coffin," Rogge said, and produced a small black disc. He slipped it into a gramophone-like speaker fitted to the cell wall. The device reproduced a voice with chilling accuracy. "Rogge, whose side will you be on?" It intoned in the unmistakable rasp of Lord Voldemort. Buck immediately dropped to his knees, tears and snot streaming down his face. Master's voice. He sobbed so hard he seemed about to faint. "Buck, you're a disgrace." Rogge slapped the iron cell door hard enough to make Buck flinch. "Don't you feel ashamed to serve a man like that? What do you know? He is the hope of our purebloods. Only the master can purify the entire magical world." Buck leapt back into fervent devotion, offering his whole heart to the absent Dark Lord. "Oh, so you follow him for pureblood ideology?" Rogge sneered. "But do you know Lord Voldemort is himself a half-blood?" "No, impossible. You're lying. You're lying," Buck stammered, his face draining of color. "Why would I lie?" Rogge gave him a contemptuous smile, as if he were dissecting the truth for sport. His mother was a witch from the Gaunt family, but she fell in love with a wealthy Muggle merchant. Didn't he ever tell you his true name? Coincidentally, I happen to know it. Buck's legs buckled. He crumpled to the floor, unable to accept what Rogge said, but each word cut deeper than the last. His original name? Tom. Tom Marvolo Riddle. You've been rotting in Azkaban for years. Don't tell me you've forgotten basic spelling. Uncle Buck, do I have to spell it out for you? Face reality. The lord you worship is a half-blood named Riddle. There's no pure-blood family called Riddle in the wizarding world. Rogge's voice went cold. He's a lunatic. You're not following some pure-blood savior. You're following a fanatic, a terrorist. Being with him has hollowed out what little brains you had. Ask your conscience, if you still have one. Because of your choices, the family's properties have been seized by the ministry. The ancestral home is in ruins. The portraits of Grandma Annie and Grandpa Torquil lie on the floor with no one to lift them. Even back when Grindelwald was active, our family was never this miserable. You still cling to the family vault? Do you really think I'm here for the money? Wake up. The money my mother and I earn in a year could rebuild the whole manor. I came to save you out of respect for the Travis name, but looking at you, you're beyond saving. Rogge shook his head and removed the disc. The cell fell silent. Buck's attempt to be moved had failed. Rogge thought of the even more unhinged Bella Lestrange and felt less hopeful by the minute. The House of Black was a study in ruin, family members turning on one another, extremes bred by generations of inbreeding. If I remember right, Sirius has already been disowned by the House of Black. Is he even worthy of what's left? Rogge said, glancing at the row of shielded cells. He noticed one containing the dog-form prisoner that had been accused wrongly. Don't worry, we'll meet. Curious about how Sirius had escaped once before, Rogge moved on to the next cell. Hello, Mrs. Lestrange. He straightened, trying to appear composed, and regarded Bellatrix, her face a mask of heavy Gothic makeup. Oh, a little wizard? Who sent you? The ministry? Bella's voice was suspicious. She peered at him but didn't recognize him. No, I just heard someone mention you, so I stopped by, Rogge replied, unfazed by her disdain. Ha ha, lover? I don't have a lover. Little fellow, what strange notion would make you think Azkaban is ever on the way? Her grin flashed white teeth, her eyes fixed on Rogge with dangerous intensity. Sigh, time for another broadcast, Rogge said, and once more fed the black disc into the speaker. When the voice asked, he's still alive? Bella lunged forward like a woman possessed, eyes bloodshot, pleading. Master is still alive. I knew he wouldn't die. Master sent you, didn't he? Tell me. Rogge merely shook his head and ejected the disc. The cell door clanged shut, leaving her to rage and scream until she collapsed back on her narrow bunk. After a long time, when the screams had dwindled, Rogge opened the hatch again. Now, can we talk, Mrs. Lestrange? He asked. He watched her face, streaked with tears, and tried to understand what power Voldemort had that made people surrender everything to him. What do you want? Bellatrix had calmed somewhat. A wild edge still lit her eyes. Hearing Voldemort had nearly sent her into full madness, but now a cold fanaticism lay under her composure. She wanted to be back at his side. Excellent. I prefer talking to people with sense. Rogge didn't care whether she could escape Azkaban or whether a prison break would come early. If the sky fell, the strong would fall hardest. He was just an ordinary young wizard. Voldemort's return could be someone else's problem. It seems the man you visit isn't as clever as he thinks, Bellatrix said, moving back to her bunk as calm returned. I always thought I was the one good at picking holes in people's words, but you, little wizard, have quite the talent. Call me Rogge, he smiled. But I'll accept Bellatrix. Bellatrix? You don't like calling me by my husband's name? She cocked her head. Oh, Rodolphus would be heartbroken to hear you call me that, wouldn't he? Rogge watched her coolly, then turned and knocked on the neighboring cells. Or perhaps his loyalty to Lord Voldemort surpasses his love for you. Perhaps he'd hand you over willingly. Get to the point, little wizard. If you're here for gossip, get out! Bellatrix strode forward, towering over him. Ha, feeling guilty? Don't be so nervous. Rogge gestured for her to relax and examined the heavy makeup on her face. I'm curious, if you and Rodolphus had a child, what would their surname be? Lestrange, Black, Gaunt, or perhaps Riddle? Bellatrix's laugh was short and savage, sharp as the edge of a knife. Chapter 113, Arthur's Amendment. Bellatrix stared at him, her wolfish glare far more terrifying than a Dementor. Tsk, tsk, tsk. Angry? But I'm stating a very possible fact, Miss Lestrange. You should think carefully. Rogge had been teasing long enough. He put his smile away. Lord Voldemort gave me Lestrange's vault. You? Show me your dark mark. Bellatrix snapped. Don't misunderstand. I'm not a Death Eater. That homeless dog with a broken spine? Yes, I'm talking about your master. He made a deal with me, said the key is in your hand. Humph, a deal? Bellatrix sneered. Her master, the great wizard, never made deals. The vault key? Then you should find Rodolphus. She turned to leave, cutting him off. Is that so? Hare, come, Rogge said suddenly, casting a spell without his wand. A lock of Bellatrix's hair was violently pulled through a vent and landed in his hand. Your hair and your wand should be enough for the goblins to open the vault for me, right? How did you? Bellatrix stared at him in shock. If not for the goblin's impeccable reputation, she would have suspected they'd told him. Watching Rogge tuck the hair away, her mind filled in the missing piece, Polyjuice. He would disguise himself as her and take the vault. Mrs. Lestrange, if I offered that homeless dog an offer he couldn't refuse, do you think he would sell you to me? Rogge reached out and, almost casually, drew Bellatrix's likeness on the prison door with a fingertip. Taunted by the brat, Bellatrix wanted to rush him and kill him. Rogge bid her a very gentlemanly farewell and picked up the disc amid her hysterical roars. He wasn't there merely to provoke Buck and Bellatrix this time. He meant to drive another nail into Lord Voldemort's camp. He wasn't Dumbledore. He wouldn't use a promising potion master as a pawn for some higher cause. Buck and Bellatrix were already too far gone. He'd offered a hand of salvation, hoping they would take it. Unfortunately, Lucius was too cunning. Otherwise, he might have been a good candidate for defection. Rogge returned to the Auror office. Dolores and Anderson were chatting and laughing, looking as if they had just gained something from the minister. Rogge, I heard you got top of your year. Congratulations. Anderson, noticeably heavier than before, patted Rogge on the shoulder. You already know? Rogge asked, startled. Hey, your headmaster had an argument with the school board a while back, and it didn't end well. Anderson leaned back on the sofa. I heard Malfoy and the others are going to cut donations for the new school year. The school's short on money? Rogge was genuinely stunned. He had never expected Hogwarts to be strapped for cash. The headmaster is the greatest white wizard. How could they be short on money? So what? Being headmaster doesn't exempt him from everyone else's rules. He can't just go around taking what he wants. Anderson smiled. Hogwarts' funding, aside from alumni donations, comes from the ministry's allocation. The Department of Finance's budget has already been confirmed to decrease by 30%. Dumbledore's going to have an even harder time. 30%? How much is that? Rogge set down his teacup and calculated. About 100,000 galleons. That little? Rogge estimated the school's annual budget, with board donations at 600,000 or 700,000. It sounded like a lot, but with so many students, it was tight. No wonder the school's brooms are falling apart. I even suspect the brooms we use are the same ones. Anderson laughed. Rogge smiled. Anderson might well be right. He turned to Dolores. How's the minister's side? You guessed right, Dolores said. I submitted the file and hadn't even reported yet, and he already felt someone was conspiring against the Ministry of Magic. She sent the other Aurors out of the office and poured Rogge a fresh cup of tea from the teapot. Maybe not the ministry itself, but him personally. Rogge winked, and the three of them shared a look. Ha ha ha, you could say that. He told the ministry to investigate thoroughly, but what can we investigate? Go find Dumbledore? Dolores sat on the desk and flipped through a folder. Shish, we can't talk nonsense without evidence. There's a saying, let it drag on. We can't offend either side. Since the minister wants the truth, let him wait. If he presses, say we need more investigation. As for what to investigate, we can say the current progress is insufficient to identify a target. If the minister can't wait, he'll go and probe himself. Why should we be the vanguard? Anderson shrugged. Push it off whenever possible. You have a point. Oh, the ministry is revising the law again? Dolores pulled out a brief and handed it to Anderson. Rogge leaned over to look. I heard about it. Arthur put it forward. Anderson handed the brief to Rogge. Isn't his office under yours? How come you, a senior Auror, don't even know? Anderson looked at Dolores with mild surprise. He has his own connections. I can't control that. Dolores shook her head. Arthur's been in the ministry a long time. Prohibition of the misuse of Muggle artifacts, Rogge read aloud. It prohibits the use of magical items that confuse Muggles. It severely cracks down on dark arts items to prevent them from harming Muggles. He frowned. The amendment was aimed at dark arts devices, but it could easily sweep up other magical items incidentally. Is this amendment likely to pass? Rogge's expression hardened. He was worried someone might use the law to go after his own devices. The magical instant camera and a Muggle camera looked identical. From any reasonable description, they'd fit the bill. Dolores saw his concern and was blunt. Our head of department, Amelia, her brother's family, were killed by you-know-who. As you saw, the brief mentions searching for dark arts tools left behind by him. The Auror office will fully support this amendment. Rogge, this law primarily targets dark arts items. You don't need to worry too much. Anderson sounded unconcerned. After so long, they finally thought to search for magical items left by Lord Voldemort. What were they doing before? In my opinion, they must have taken a forgetfulness potion. Rogge shook his head. I understand the sentiment, but this is a weapon. Once the amendment passes, any magical item that can confuse Muggles will be considered prohibited. In Rogge's view, motive mattered less than capability. Today they use this law to crack down on dark arts items. Fine, but what about tomorrow and the day after? Am I supposed to put my hope in other people's goodwill? He scoffed. Dolores and Anderson exchanged looks. Neither could guarantee the law wouldn't be misused. Legal provisions and their application are two very different things. Actually, it's still for the protection of Muggles, Dolores said. Cameras don't harm them. I think the ministry won't extend it to ordinary wizards. Perhaps, Anderson conceded, but there are always people who see themselves as saviors. Why do they always think they're protecting Muggles? As if, without them, Muggles would vanish. A bunch of self-important fools, Rogge said. They should be sent to the gulag in Siberia. No, thrown before the medieval Inquisition, let the flames purify their benevolent hearts. He stood and picked up his coat, then stopped as if remembering something. Dolores, lend me a wand, Bellatrix's. Dolores blinked. She's a known Death Eater. Don't just handle the wand. Don't worry, I'm only using it for an experiment. Rogge's voice was calm. He had no intention of rescuing Bellatrix. Dolores led him to the evidence room and pulled out the wand. Walnut casing, dragon heartstring, 12 inches. Here, take it. Remember to return it, she added. Don't worry. Rogge waved her off, then stepped into the green flames of the fireplace and vanished. Lokebeak toyed with Bella's wand between his fingers as he walked through the marble halls of Gringotts. He could, if he wanted, slip into the vault disguised as Bella or use the password Voldemort had left behind. He wasn't in a hurry. For one thing, any attempt at theft would run straight into the thief's downfall. For another, he hadn't figured out what to do about Voldemort's Horcruxes. They were relics left by the school's founders, too precious to destroy without careful thought. It was ironic. Of the 4 house relics, only the Gryffindor sword remained in circulation. Loke sighed, clipped Bella's wand into a little case, and locked it away. He had no intention of returning it yet, safer in his pocket than sitting at the ministry. If his memory served, Tom Riddle's diary would be returning to Hogwarts this year and cause another uproar. He let the thought hang, an opportunity forming in the back of his mind. Gringotts was always busy, as if endless galleons were queuing up to be packed into underground vaults. He was used to that sight. Welcome to Gringotts, Mr. Beak. Heading to your vault today? A goblin attendant hopped down from his high stool to meet him. Vault 11, Loke said, producing the key. The goblin nodded, took the key, and led him toward the dragon car rails. They climbed aboard a small rail car. A goblin driver took the controls. Are goblins really the best craftsmen in the wizarding world? Loke asked, looking at the carved vault doors and the gleam of the rails as they dove underground. Of course, the goblin snorted. 1,000 years ago, our King Ragnuk forged a sword for Gryffindor. Wizards stole it from us. Stole? Loke raised an eyebrow. If it was forged for Gryffindor, shouldn't it belong to a wizard? Humph! The goblin's nostrils flared. What our hands make belongs to us. You rent it. When the renter dies, the item and its ownership returns to the goblins. It is simple and right. Loke smiled inwardly at the warped logic. He'd heard goblins argue that way before. That's a rather convenient definition of a purchase, he said. A shame. I came here today to discuss a big deal. The railcar flipped and plunged deeper. That was long ago, the goblin said. It doesn't change business today. They emerged at a vault door. The goblin slid the key into a slot, and the heavy lock mechanisms clacked open one by one. Loke pushed the door, and his eyes were nearly blinded by the mountain of gold inside. The goblin calmly began loading coins into an undetectable extension charm bag. "Mr. Beak," the goblin said while working, "there's nothing better than goblin-made metal. It conducts magic well, can be worked into anything, and once enchanted, it needs little upkeep, far superior to ordinary materials." He set down a heavy ingot composed of a dull, peculiar metal and tipped his head. "Would you like to buy some?" Loke put down the bag. He had a plan to add goblin-style defensive magic to his new house. "How much do you ask?" 10 galleons a pound, the goblin replied without hesitation. Loke suppressed a laugh. 10 galleons? That's outrageous. 10 sickles a pound is more like it. Besides, outside of minting coins, your stuff just sits here underground, gathering dust. Don't you have other channels to sell through? The goblin's eyes narrowed. 3 galleons, he countered flatly. Loke shook his head and made a show of disappointment. Fine, I'll just buy building supplies from a muggle then. Slightly higher upkeep isn't the end of the world. Something like hunger flickered across the goblin's face. He hurried to change tactics. Wait, 10 sickles it is, 10 sickles, but you must buy at least 30,000 galleons worth. 30,000? Loke laughed coldly. Do you take me for a fool? How about 20,000? No less than 10,000. The goblin's expression shifted. His eyes glittered. Actually, I want to buy. No, I mean you could buy 100,000 galleons worth. If the price is right, say 5 sickles per pound. Loke's eyebrows lifted. 100,000 galleons. The goblin couldn't hide his greed. You work it out yourself. At 5 sickles a pound, 100,000 galleons buys about 340,000 pounds, roughly 154 tons, not even enough to sheath a manor. If you need more, we can provide more, the goblin added quickly, rubbing his hands together. As long as the galleons are there, there's no limit. Loke allowed himself a small smile. He wouldn't reveal all his plans yet. Don't be hasty. We'll discuss when we're settled. Please get in. The goblin respectfully opened the railcar door and led him through winding tunnels to Gringotts' VIP suite, a chamber only a handful of wizards ever saw. The room was a goblin showpiece, walls and fittings of burnished gold and silver catching the light from a crystal chandelier, a floor of silver bricks that rang when they walked, a round table carved with elaborate motifs, cushions trimmed with tassels and inset gems. It was gaudy, yes, unashamedly so, but in a way that shouted wealth and taste. "Mr. Beak, what do you think of the deal?" the goblin asked, standing near the doorway. He was suddenly deferential, studying Loke as if this one client might change his life. Loke picked up a small golden statuette of a cat on the table, pure gold, not the black Bastet amulets Loke had seen before. A lovely piece. Egyptian? Yes, sir, from a tomb in the desert. Our cursebreaker brought it back. The goblin gave a little bow. Then, when Loke's gaze turned back to him, he added, "If you prefer, I can negotiate on behalf of Gringotts, or in my own name." There it was, the choice every goblin faced. If he acted for the bank, he'd earn a modest bonus. If he signed personally, the entire commission would be his. The goblin's hand hovered over the statuette, as if weighing the consequences. "As long as the service satisfies me," Loke said. He set a small wooden model of a Muggle-style manor on the table. "This is what the new place will look like. I'll pay 100,000 galleons." The goblin's face lit up, and then he composed himself into obsequious professionalism. "We will prepare the goblin medal for you, Mr. Beak. If you'll sign the agreement in my name, I'll see it done quickly." Loke smiled and laid down a condition. "You'll also provide the stone and masonry materials needed for construction free of charge." The goblin blinked, then smirked. "Stone is not something we give away lightly. They must be quarried, found. There will be costs." Loke held the goblin's look and tapped the golden cat on the table. You just said stones were useless. Why are they suddenly so costly? The goblin's smirk wavered. For a moment, greed and caution warred in his eyes. The deal was on the table. Both knew the next words would tip it either way. Chapter 115, Friendship and Business. Oh, my dear Mr. Rogge, you mustn't say that. Those stones were worthless when no one wanted them, but now that someone does, they deserve a proper price. Whether it's white Italian marble, obsidian granite from the Earth's core, or limestone from the Yarlung Sangpo, there's no stone our goblins can't find, Lokebeek continued with the practiced confidence of his kind. And there are no buyers greedier than you. Rogge replied with a small pout, admitting the truth. He was bargaining precisely because the goblins were greedy. I need alert and defensive enchantments for the manor, security at least on par with Gringotts. Oh, impossible. Gringotts only reached its strength after nearly 1,000 years, Lokebeek countered, not refusing outright but emphasizing the difficulty. You mean more money? Of course, Rogge said. If you add another 100,000 galleons, I'll take the full package. Stone, goblin metal, the defensive wards you think will work, I'll pay for it. I'll make this manor as secure as Gringotts. It will be the safest place in the magical world. Lokebeek's offer was tempting. Most wizards would have agreed. But Rogge knew Gringotts' weaknesses all too well and didn't accept such boasts at face value. Like when someone last year blasted open a vault door? He asked. Slander, that thief failed, Lokebeek protested loudly. But he got in, didn't he? That shows the security isn't infallible. Mine is a 4-digit vault number, Rogge said, holding up his vault key. Isn't that riskier than a 3-digit one? They haggled. 150,000 galleons. 120,000? 130,000? Deal. Rogge extended his hand. Lokebeek hesitated only a moment before shaking it. Mr. Rogge, you're the first wizard willing to shake our hand, the goblin said, unexpectedly moved. Goblins did not consider themselves servants of wizards, but they had always been closely tied to them. As long as we aren't enemies, I can be courteous, Rogge replied generously. The war between goblins and wizards ended centuries ago. We should get along. Yes, get along, Rogge nodded, thinking ahead. If Voldemort ever returned, he'd rather have the goblins on his side than against him. They signed the contract. Lokebeek then picked up a golden statuette from the table and with visible effort presented it to Rogge. This is a token of our friendship, Lokebeek said, sounding as if it pained him to part with it. The statuette was pure gold, inlaid with cat's eye gems, valuable in both the muggle and magical worlds. Thank you. It's not every day a goblin gives a gift, Rogge said, nodding. He knew how miserly goblins could be. He'd never heard of one giving a present to a wizard before. This Christmas, may I send you an owl? You want to send me a Christmas gift? Lokebeek stared in disbelief. A wizard sending a goblin a present? Was he dreaming? It would be welcome, absolutely welcome, Lokebeek recovered, then added quickly. But friendship is friendship, and the contract is the contract. Of course, Rogge said. That suited him fine. Friendship shouldn't interfere with business. With the contract signed and the goblins on board, the manor's reconstruction could begin as soon as a construction team was found. The weather had been gloomy all day, the sky low and sullen with the occasional fine rain. The rebuild was ready to start. Rogge had even decided, thanks to Bojin's suggestion, to hire house elves for the work. He pushed open the shop door and found Bojin waiting. Mr. Rogge, young Master Travis, you're here. How can I help? Bojin's posture was servile to the point of flattery. Rogge glanced at his plain clothes and wondered why the man was so overly deferential. Bojin, be less formal. Just call me Rogge, he said. All right, Rogge. Bojin brightened and trotted alongside him, showing off the new magical items on the shelves. Rogge picked up a ring set with a blood-red stone and turned the conversation to business. I heard the ministry is planning a major sweep. A sweep? Bojin's eyes widened. Is Minister Fudge? They'll be searching for dark arts objects, Rogge said. It might be an opportunity. Are there any house elves available for sale right now? Not many, Bojin admitted and smoothed his hair. House elves are status symbols and invaluable servants. Once a pureblood household takes one on, they serve for generations. They're in high demand. Rogge watched the man's eagerness. Everything Bojin said implied a price. Money isn't the issue. I don't want ordinary house elves. I want young ones, loyal ones. Loyal, don't worry. A house elf would never betray its master, Bojin said, thumping his chest. Then unexpectedly he pushed back at a chest of galleons Rogge placed on the counter. Please, take this back. Rogge raised an eyebrow. Bojin, state your terms. This isn't like you. Bojin took a breath. When will your magical telephone be released? Oh, that thing. Rogge leaned on the counter while Bojin fetched a chair and sat. You want to be a dealer? A dealer? Bojin blinked, uncertain at first, then nodded. I mean, I buy your magical telephones in bulk and sell them. You can. I'm open to partners. We'll share the profits. Rogge smiled. Galleons are tempting. You, Mr. Rogge, Bojin gushed, only a wizard like you could do what Nicholas Flamel never did. Flamel's Philosopher's Stone is lauded, but your instant camera brings something new to the magical world. If not for you, everyone would still be using antiques from a century ago. Enough flattery, Rogge said, though he couldn't hide a smirk. Focus on finding the house elves. Leave it to me. I'll search the whole world for the right ones, Bojin promised. Rogge set a stack of commission on the counter and told him his other requirement. Also, find a wizard experienced in Muggle architectural plans. I don't want amateurish, illegal construction. That will be harder. Wizards tend to disdain Muggle ways, but I'll do it. Bojin finally accepted the commission and tucked it into a box under the counter. And if anything valuable comes my way, I'll show you first. Rogge's face darkened at that last remark. He felt the man was trying to take advantage, then shrugged it off. He left the shop with a chest full of galleons and headed back to Hogwarts. The school was on holiday. The grounds were quiet. Only Dumbledore and Snape remained, down in the dungeons, absorbed in potion research. Chapter 116, Heart of Gold. Professor, I've come to see you again. Rogge dropped out of the fireplace and greeted Snape. Are you free? Or should I give you some homework? Snape's hand trembled at the sound of the voice. A curl of gray-black smoke rose from a test tube. Don't be stupid, Rogge hurried on, seeing the expression on Snape's face. There's no such thing as summer homework in the British wizarding world. He bowed an exaggerated apology and began helping Snape tidy the workbench. Speak. What do you want this time? Snape waved his sleeve and fixed the boy with a stare. I heard Headmaster Dumbledore had a run-in with the board, Rogge said, opening a small box. A stack of galleons flashed inside, 100,000 of them. I thought I'd contribute to the school. Rogge. Snape rose so fast his robe rustled. He was about to order the money taken back. Take it with you. Even if the school is having difficulties, with Dumbledore and the staff here, there's no need. It's not charity, Professor. Rogge hurried to explain, clapping his hands together. It isn't ministry compensation. It's our family's earnings this year. Earned? Snape's disbelief was plain. In 1 year, that sum was more than most wizards earned in a lifetime. More surprising than the money, though, was the child's intention. He wanted to help the school. Snape's face softened a fraction. Rogge, put it away. We don't need. Wait. Rogge held the box up. I'm not giving it away. I'm here to do business with Headmaster Dumbledore. Business? Snape's frown deepened. What could be worth 100,000 galleons? Don't even think about Fawkes, he added sharply. The Phoenix or anything in the headmaster's office was not for sale. No, not that. Please let me finish. Rogge hurried on. I'm rebuilding our manor. The materials are ready, but the construction crew is asking for too much. Humph. Snape's glare could have frozen a cauldron. You're not planning to ask Dumbledore to build your house. Of course not, Rogge protested. Dumbledore is the greatest wizard. I want to borrow the school's house elves. They're magical too. He'd thought about other options, secret passages and all, but an architect was ready, and with elves as workers, the place could be finished. The wizard construction team is charging over 500,000. Rogge clasped his hands and looked imploringly at Snape. Snape blinked. Since when did building a house cost 500,000? He felt a fleeting urge to abandon potions for architecture. He thought it over, then said, Very well, come with me. He gestured for Rogge to carry the box and follow. At the headmaster's office door, they ran into a flashy figure, Gilderoy Lockhart, all smile and gleaming teeth. Hello, Gilderoy Lockhart, he announced, striking a pose. Order of Merlin, 3rd class, honorary member of the Anti-Dark Arts League. and a 5-time winner of the Daily Prophet's Most Charming Smile Award. He beamed as if the sun had arrived at Hogwarts. Snape merely frowned. Rogue, however, brightened. "Professor, this is Lockhart," he said. "He's an internationally famous author." Lockhart swooped, delighted. He pulled Rogue toward him as if he'd found a fan. "I didn't know I had admirers here." He offered an autograph, then continued, blocking their path. "By the way, before term begins, I'll be signing copies of my new book, Magical Me, at Flourish and Blots." He puffed up and cleared his throat. "And even more exciting, Headmaster Dumbledore has agreed that starting in September, I will be the new Defense Against the Dark Arts professor." "If you've read my books, such as Voyages with Ghouls," Rogue rolled his eyes and shot Snape a look that plainly said, "Please, do something drastic." Lockhart kept talking. For half an hour he talked. Snape felt his patience dissolving. The man's robes were bright, his chatter endless, and Snape's mind filled with dark fantasies of shoving him into the dungeons. When at last Lockhart paused, both Snape and Rogue looked at each other and realized the new school year was going to be very long. "Is he a paid professor?" Rogue asked, twitching from the barrage of self-praise. "Paid?" Snape hasn't the foggiest. "Do you mean he bought the job?" "That would be ridiculous. Dumbledore wouldn't." Snape began, but both of them fell silent as Dumbledore's voice sounded from within. The headmaster had obviously been listening. "Rogue, you shouldn't hate school, should you?" Dumbledore said cheerfully as they entered. "How could I? The campus is huge, everyone's so talented, and the professors are so interesting. I love it," Rogue said, placing the box on Dumbledore's desk with a flourish. "Headmaster, may I borrow the school's house elves for the summer? 100,000 galleons." His sleeve caught the lid and the box tipped. 100,000 galleons spilled across the carpet, tumbling and chinking toward the staircase. The sudden clatter knocked Rogue backward. Snape caught him before he hit the steps and pulled him upright. Dumbledore, seated by his desk, looked down at the scattered coins and coughed delicately to hide his surprise. Snape jabbed Rogue in the ribs with his foot, not hard, but hard enough to tell the boy he'd been foolish. "Severus thinks the proposal has merit," Rogue said, turning to Dumbledore. "The house elves are idle during the holidays. Let them see the outside world and earn something." Dumbledore rose and walked to his perch. Fawkes, sitting as ever, looked older than when they'd last seen him, many feathers missing, his plumage dull like an exhausted old bird. Dumbledore waved his wand. The coins lifted obediently and returned to the box. "Yes," Dumbledore said finally. "They may go, but they must be back a week before term starts. There won't be time to prepare otherwise." "Understood, Headmaster." Rogue agreed instantly, as if afraid Dumbledore would change his mind if he hesitated, and he left smiling. Dumbledore watched him go, then turned to Snape. "He has a heart of gold," Snape said quietly, surprising the headmaster. Praise from Severus was rare. "There is something I must tell you," Dumbledore said, moving to the pensieve. He drew a memory from his temple with a practiced flick and eased it into the basin. "Fletcher is dead. He died in an interrogation room at the Ministry of Magic." "That thief?" Snape's brow tightened. He stared at Dumbledore. "You mean his death has something to do with Rogue?" Chapter 117, Goblin Forged. "No, that's not it. The Wizengamot examined Fletcher's body, and I've spoken with the Aurors. His true cause of death was an unbreakable vow." Dumbledore noticed Snape's suspicious look and added, "I did not make one with him." Dumbledore sighed, regret heavy in his voice. He left all his money to a beloved wizard, but the other party despised him and cast a charm so Fletcher could never say their name. Snape's mouth fell open. He couldn't even mention the other person's name. What a fool. And now Fudge is convinced the money was meant for me. He thinks I'm secretly plotting to overthrow him. Dumbledore's laugh was hollow. He could not fathom the minister's logic. "Has a Dementor eaten his brain?" Snape sneered. "Does he think he needs a plot to overthrow that good-for-nothing? Is he overestimating or underestimating himself? The real problem is he doesn't trust me. I'm afraid the ministry's allocation to Hogwarts will be even smaller next year." Dumbledore's shoulders slumped. In the old Irish manor, the useless outbuildings and overgrown trees had been cleared away. A coffee-brown tent had been pitched, and inside the tent, Sarah inspected an architectural model a Muggle had made. The interior of the enchanted tent was generous. Bedroom, bathtub, living room, kitchen. Everything a wizard traveling or operating undercover might need. According to Bo Jin, Sarah was from the United States. She used to pass as a Muggle and had studied at the University of Pennsylvania's School of Architecture. She expertly took the model apart in her hands, separating it into its components. With a quick flick of her wand, she substituted mundane elements with magical utilities, making the whole structure far more suitable for wizard life. "Rogge, your vision is impressive," she said. "I seldom see a wizard move away from old conventions and embrace new ideas. Muggle design has its advantages, but their construction methods are crude." Rogge, who was not an expert in construction, kept his remarks practical. "Miss Sarah, I only ask that the structure be sound and your changes won't create safety issues. Don't worry, I'll guarantee it on my professional integrity." She tapped the model. "You don't need such a complicated plan here. A movable staircase will do." "The building itself is limited by the designer's perspective," she continued. "They don't have magic, so they solve things the simplest way. I can build on their foundation to create something more extraordinary. But are you sure these little elves can do the work?" She watched the house elves wielding shovels and mops, and then the goblins digging tunnels nearby. Lokebeak stood at the entrance, barking orders, urging his goblins to speed up moving materials. Despite his flashy clothes, he was a ruthless exploiter of his own kind. "Lokebeak, is goblin forging an innate skill?" Rogge called, drawing the goblin over. "Of course. No one understands forging better than we do." Lokebeak puffed up proudly. "How do you pass down your forging skill?" Rogge asked. "In your wizard words, mostly by word of mouth and example," Lokebeak answered. "Don't you have books, like this one?" Rogge produced a worn volume titled Goblin's Underground Workshop. Lokebeak glanced at the title and burst into uncontrollable laughter. He doubled over, clutching his belly and rolling on the tent carpet. "Forgive me, but I cannot help it. Ha ha ha! That book is written in goblin words as you wizards imagine them, but we never use such turns of phrase." He handed the book back. "Read it as a storybook. It's only fit for your kind." Rogge's face darkened. So all the goblin books in the libraries were wizard fantasies, Lokebeak was implying. "I want to learn your forging. Is there a way?" "Our forging is not for teaching," Lokebeak said flatly. 1,000 galleons. I promise not to pass it on." Rogge tossed the figure like a test. Lokebeak hesitated. "You know, this is our secret. No goblin has ever taught such work to a wizard. It would be a betrayal of the race." "More money?" Rogge sat and motioned him closer. Lokebeak's expression shifted. "Well, it's not easy. We are different races." 3,000 galleons, then," Rogge offered. "That's already high. If you refuse, some other goblin will accept." He pointed to the goblins outside, tattered but industrious. "You make it hard." Lokebeak's eyes darted. Betrayal could be bought, it seemed. 5,000 galleons plus the cost of a forging workshop, and I'll teach you all our techniques. He put the price long practiced by those who bargain with galleons into the air without a second thought. Rogge produced a heavy bag of coins, but suggested a different arrangement. "Pay per lesson. Price each lesson by the knowledge taught. More you teach, more I pay." "And who sets the price?" Lokebeak asked, more interested in the galleons than the craft. "How about starting at 50 galleons a lesson?" Rogge proposed, knowing full well goblins loved a steady flow of coin. 50! Lokebeak's eyes lit up. A constant stream of galleons for continuous lessons. He could collect and perhaps even trade knowledge gleaned from others. With centuries of secrets, they could easily empty his vault. "There's no upper limit," Rogge added, "but if I'm not satisfied, I can terminate the arrangement." Lokebeak agreed at once. "Rogge, my lessons will satisfy you." "Good, and the lessons must be in Goblin." Rogge showed his intent. He spoke only a little of the language. That was precisely why he wanted to learn from them. "You speak Goblin?" Lokebeak was surprised. "Only a little," Rogge admitted. "That's why I am here." Lokebeak beamed at the apparent eagerness of the wizard. Pride, too, found purchase in teaching, a high-born wizard humbled enough to learn from goblins. There was a final condition he could not ignore. "One clause," Lokebeak said, growing solemn. "You may not pass goblin knowledge to any other creature." He had some faint conscience left for his people, at least enough to insist on protecting the race in writing. Compared with Lord Voldemort, Lokebeak was a much better teacher. For the love of galleons, he practically talked without stopping and answered every question. Rogge wanted to siphon knowledge out of him. Loke wanted to siphon galleons out of Rogue's pockets. A perfect two-way street, a win for both. He barely seemed to need his Gringotts job anymore. He came to the magic tent every day to teach. Today he had brought another large bag of underground ores and crystals to show Rogge how to identify them. This shiny black ore is called serpentinite, Loke said, holding up a dark stone and showing Rogge how to inspect it. It contains rich magical energy and is an important material for many powerful runes. Good serpentinite is very rare and very expensive. He tapped a pile of colorful crystals. These come in different colors and properties. Different crystals enhance different kinds of spells. For example, this blood-red crystal amplifies offensive magic, very useful in combat. He shook the red crystal between his fingers, but hardly any wizards use them now. They're mostly collector's items. He pointed to a pile of milky white and clear crystals. These purify the mind and strengthen divination. He grinned, eyes flicking greedily toward Rogge's coins. If you learn to tell them apart, you can buy precious gems for bargain prices from both wizards and muggles. I can sell you all of these. Rogge noticed a colorless crystal among the colorful stones. It felt eerily like the crystal casing of his golden snitch. "What's this one?" he asked. "Oh, that's a prism crystal," Loke said after a moment's thought, as if that were indeed its name. Rogge held it up to the light and saw it refracted like the snitch's case. All crystals refract light, but prism crystals refract light in an exceptionally pure way. The refracted light can be used as energy. These are fragments, though, mostly decorative. Using light as power? Rogge's eyes lit up. That meant the crystal case could be the power source for Golden Snitch number 101. No wonder he hadn't been able to unlock it. For the first time, Rogge handed Loke 150 galleons. He took out the diagram Ronan the Centaur had deciphered and hung it by the shelf, then placed the snitch back in its crystal casing and faced it toward the sun. Sunlight passed through the prism crystal and split into tiny rays that pierced the snitch. The still snitch absorbed the light, began to rotate on its own, and the engraved star map inside jerked into chaotic motion. Rogge took it out and, like solving a Rubik's Cube, restored the star positions one by one. After that, he spent almost every day working at the snitch. Meanwhile, the little house-building operation under Sarah's direction also picked up speed. The house elves were quick learners, diligent, magical, and able to follow Sarah's instructions precisely. Bubble became a supervisor, directing the others to cut and haul massive stone blocks. They dug deep foundations, channeled the rising groundwater into an artificial lake, and used magic to shore up the surrounding soil until the ground was solid. Once the reinforcing materials were poured, they used levitation charms to lay out neatly cut stone slabs. Huge pillars and beams rose quickly and formed the framework. Outer walls went up with the permanent sticking charm. Sarah constantly checked the blueprints and sent goblins to fetch the right materials. Everything was flourishing, edging toward a better life. As the manor outside the tent took shape, the golden snitch yielded its secret. When Rogge twisted it to restore the last star position, it clicked and, with a soft pop, unfurled like a golden flower. Inside its intricate workings was a fingernail-sized golden feather. A feather? Rogge leaned in. It was a perfectly formed bird feather, glowing warmly like sunlight. He made it float with his wand and held it up for inspection. The shaft was taut, the down dense and springy, and the gold color dazzled. When Rogge exhaled, the down moved lightly, like an exquisite mechanical toy. "So all this trouble for a feather," he said, a little disappointed. Beautiful as it was, it seemed useless. Maybe it was one of Bowman Wright's little jokes for future generations. He turned the feather over in his hand. Suddenly a ripple flowed from it. Rogge felt as if a hook yanked him sharply at the navel. His body spun into a spiral, and in an instant he vanished from the tent. "Where?" Rogge muttered, casting a shield charm on himself and drawing his wand. He was standing in a vast marsh. Thick fog lay everywhere, and visibility was almost nil. Reeds rose around him in every direction so densely he felt lost in a green maze. A portkey, he realized. The feather hovered nearby like a compass, pointing the way. Rogge followed it, stepping down into a pit of noxious, rotten-smelling mud. The stench hit him. He coughed. The ground was suctiony. Every step sank with a squelch. Bubbles popped underfoot, and in the distance, the croaking of toads and an eerie rustling set his nerves on edge. He tried to pull his foot free, but the mire gripped him. He couldn't go on. "I hope it's two-way," he muttered. He grabbed the feather, and in a blink, it took him back to where he had started. "The carpet," he blurted, as he looked down at mud on his shoes and trousers. Sarah came rushing in, pinching her nose, and waved her wand. "Scourgify." "Rogue, did you fall into a cesspool?" she asked, disgusted, as she opened the tent for ventilation. "No, a marsh," he said, wiping mud from his sleeve. "You should be careful. Marshes hide all sorts of dangerous magical creatures. Poachers and dark organizations love places like that. You didn't forget your broomstick, did you?" Sarah gave him a look as if a broomstick was as essential to a British wizard as an umbrella to a London muggle. "A broom?" Rogue felt a twinge of reluctance. Sarah went to the table and marked the construction progress on the architectural model. After half a month of hard work, the new manor was largely finished. Only the finishing touches remained. She closed her notebook and looked at Rogue. "Do you want me to introduce you to some wizards who specialize in enchantments? Right now, the manor is only a shell. It needs decoration and charms before it can be used." Rogue nodded. He knew decorating would cost more than building. "I'll buy supplies in the Muggle world," he said. "It'll save a lot of money." "As for the spells," Sarah said, "the goblins have agreed to help cast the protective wards. I haven't decided who to entrust with the undetectable extension charm or the everyday household enchantments yet." Chapter 119, Quidditch Swamp. "Rogge, with all due respect, I don't trust the protective enchantments the goblins put on the manor," Sarah said bluntly, not bothering to hide her opinion. "Those loan-sharking goblins will see Travis Manor as their property before long." "No way," Rogge frowned, though a cold worry crept up his spine. Talking with Loke Beak over the past few days had taught him how miserly and treacherous goblins could be. If there was money to be made, they would sell out friends, family, even themselves. Every brick and floorboard in the manor had come from goblin supplies. Goblin metal reinforced the joists and fittings. That was practical. Goblin craftsmanship made the building sturdier and easier to enchant, but it also meant the place bore the goblin's mark. Under their logic, sold goods could be reclaimed after the buyer died. Rogge wasn't sure what they thought about things given freely. Seeing him freeze, Sarah leaned in and emphasized her point. "Don't underestimate them. Their bottom line is much lower than you think." "Give me 30,000 galleons and I'll handle all the protective spells," she continued, as if that were a matter of course. 30,000? Rogge shook his head. "Too expensive. I'll do it myself." He didn't want unknown hands leaving back doors in the manor. Still, Sarah pressed the issue. "It's a huge place. Even leaving aside the undetectable extension charm and the defensive wards, you can't personally enchant every teapot and broom. House elves can do the heavy lifting, but they don't have wands. The delicate work, the detailed charms and decorative enchantments has to be done by wizards." "All right, I'll do it cheaper. 10,000 galleons, and I'll take on all the household magic and the manor decorations. I know a few very experienced wizards skilled in all sorts of styles." "Are they reliable?" Rogge asked. Sarah blinked and smiled too quickly. "That's my sister. Of course she's reliable." She realized she'd spoken more freely than she intended and laughed awkwardly. Rogge didn't care who did the work, as long as it was done properly. "You'll pay 30% up front, inspect it when it's done, then pay the rest. Final payment, no discounts." "No problem." After Sarah left, Rogge flopped on the sofa and tried to clear his mind. Where had the golden feather led him? Bowman Wright's alchemy workshop? He tied the feather to a cord and wore it as a necklace. A marsh that huge shouldn't be hard to find. He summoned a copy of Three Islands' travelogue from the shelf and flipped through it until he found the entry. Quidditch Marsh. The name was telling. Quidditch, the sport, had originated there. Long ago, wizards had played ball on flying brooms over those bogs. The pastime spread from Ireland across the world. In the earliest games, a tiny living golden snitch was released at the start, and killing it won its captor 150 galleons. As the sport grew, living golden snitches became scarcer, Bowman Wright eventually invented the mechanical golden snitch to replace the creatures. The old reward of 150 galleons became 150 points, and the living golden snitch eventually went extinct. Rogge touched the feather against his chest. Maybe it had belonged to one of those small golden snitches. How to get there? He could fly by broom or buy a magic carpet. Where wizards were common, you might have the Flu Network or simply Apparat, but out in the wild, he'd have to rely on personal transport, thestral carriages, brooms, carpets. Magic carpets were illegal in Britain, too close to Muggle household items, the ministry said, but Rogge wasn't deterred. He rang up Bojin and showed him the Nimbus 2000, then brought up the idea of a carpet. Bojin produced a carpet with a flourish. My friend Bashir smuggled this back from Turkey, first rate, gold thread, a weave with unicorn hair. Feels like lying on a cloud. Top speed 150 miles an hour, carries 200 pounds. For 500 galleons, and it's yours, Bojin declared. That's a tenth of what a Nimbus costs. 5? Rogge shook his head and grinned. 5 galleons, and it's a bargain. Bojin's eyes nearly popped. No, you don't understand what I went through to get this here. Bashir nearly got caught by a Weasley. The absolute minimum is 100 galleons. 50. One more coin and I'm walking. Bojin stared, then snatched the coins with a show of wounded pride. Fine. Friends, you know, if it were anyone else I wouldn't sell. Bojin had probably paid 3 galleons for it originally. The ministry's recent crackdowns had driven many illegal items into the black market. They chatted a moment about Far Eastern flying devices. Hong Kong uses brooms, mostly, Bojin said uncertainly. Also flying swords and bamboo copters in some places. Flying swords? Rogge's eyes lit up. The image of zooming through the sky on a sword thrilled him. Bojin pushed a little harder, inventing urgency. The Hong Kong branch might be withdrawn in a few years, he said, so channels might close. Rogge smiled and postponed the impulse buys. Now on his little carpet, he cut across the sky toward Quidditch Marsh. He rode in style. The carpet cushioned him, and he had a steaming hot pot balanced in front of him. He plucked tripe and thin slices of beef out of the pot and chewed with glee until a fierce pepper hit him. Tears sprang to his eyes. He gulped milk and cursed the absence of chili tolerance. Below, in the reeds, masked figures in black robes watched the floating carpet with alarm. Boss, that's a magic carpet. Aren't they banned here? And look, steam coming down from it, one of them hissed. Carl, wearing his trademark top hat, smiled lazily. He flicked his wrist, his wand, inlaid with gold, flew into his hand. With a rapid flurry of movements, he sent a salvo of 6 spells toward the carpet, bright, sharp blasts that burst like fireworks around it. Rogge dropped his chopsticks in shock, cast a quick shield charm, and peered over the edge. Sparks and colored explosions popped and faded around him. He hugged the hot pot to his chest and peered down. Who are you? He shouted. Boss, you missed, Rex said from the reeds, incredulous. The boss's shots were usually precise. Even a hippogriff couldn't get away. How had he missed this time? Carl only leaned back against the reeds, took a long drag from his cigarette, and exhaled smoke, unhurried. No rush. Let the fireworks burn a little while longer, he said, as though enjoying the show. Chapter 120, Eating Hot Pot and Singing Songs. The fireworks scattered and caught the magic carpet alight the moment the last word left his mouth. The once perfect carpet was riddled with a dozen gaping holes in an instant. Its fringes flashed and flamed, and the whole thing trailed black smoke as it spiraled down toward the marsh. Ah! Rex shouted, and apparated to where the carpet was falling. 3 figures in matching clothes appeared where the carpet crashed, combing the area for Rogge's sign. Boss, he's gone, one of them reported. Rex licked his lips in frustration. The duck he thought he'd caught had flown away. Carl checked carefully. Ilya, what do you see? There were no footprints, no bent reeds. He didn't land, Ilya said coolly. The target was alert and left midair. He dipped a finger into the overturned hot pot and licked the red oil off. Ugh, bloody spicy. Mexico, is it? Homenum revelio. Carl waved his wand and a ripple of detection magic spread from him. The area was empty, save for the swaying reeds. Consider him lucky to have slipped away. We need to find the Silvermane Pegasi. He flicked a ball of green fiendfire from his wand tip. The vicious flames consumed the carpet's remains and leaped into the reed bed. The fiend fire coalesced into a giant serpentine blaze, and the reeds it licked caught like tinder with sickening, crackling ease. The lush marsh became a sea of fire. The smoky light turned the sky an eerie, poisonous green. Animals panicked, and the marsh filled with brief, horrible cries that were swallowed by the flames. A herd of silver-maned pegasi took to the air in the distance. Carl's eyes lit. He and his companions vaulted onto their brooms and headed for the fleeing herd. Rogge stepped out of his disillusionment charm, raised his wand, and sent a surge of aguamenti at the fire snake. What his attackers didn't know was that Rogge had pushed his aguamenti far beyond the ordinary. What had been a gentle stream swelled into a rushing torrent, a cutting force that slammed into the green flames. "Big brother, that wizard's back!" someone shouted behind Rex. He spun to see aguamenti pressing the fiend fire into submission. When had such a simple spell become a match for dark magic? Carl glanced toward the scorched reeds. Under repeated aguamenti blasts, the fire snake was gasping for life. He cursed inwardly. This little wizard wasn't to be underestimated. The feud had been set. He couldn't let the brat go. "Catch the Pegasi first. We'll take care of him later." "You two grab the Pegasi. I'll kill that kid." Rex grinned cruelly, shrugging off his comrades and lunging after Rogge. "Rex," Carl called, but Rex was already streaking ahead. "Big brother, he's just a kid. Let's secure the Pegasi," Ilya said with a smile, not taking the distant little wizard seriously. Dudley felt a chill, but kept quiet. Rogge watched Rex close in and glanced at his Nimbus 2000. By the time the fiend fire on the ground died away, Rex was within 500 meters, almost on top of him. Rogge gripped the Nimbus. The broom shot forward beneath him with a whoosh. "Damn it, that rich brat," Rex swore. He hadn't expected the target to be on a Nimbus. His killing intent hardened, and he surged after Rogge. In the ancient Quidditch marsh, another broom chase flared to life, not for the snitch, but for survival. Rex rode an old firebrand. It had good bounce, but it couldn't match a Nimbus for raw speed. However, Rex's broom had been modified to deliver short, violent bursts. A novice on such a good broom. What a waste, he muttered, clinging like a hungry wolf. He watched Rogge's flying technique. Basic, erratic, not worthy of a Nimbus. Each time Rogge's path wavered, Rex closed the gap. Rogge understood air resistance. He kept his body pressed to the broom and rode the wind. But Rex's bursts kept pushing him closer. Rex squeezed a control on the firebrand. Bang, bang! The broom erupted into flame several times and its speed spiked, briefly overtaking the Nimbus. "Whoa, it can do that!" Rogge glanced back as the firebrand lunged forward like it had swallowed a farting candy. "Avada Kedavra!" Rex bellowed, wand out, a green flash streaking straight for Rogge. Rogge twisted the broom and narrowly avoided it, losing speed. Another killing curse whipped past. He yanked left, the spell skittered by his ear. "Damn, dodge this!" Rex screamed and fired again. Rogge's heart hammered. If he flew straight, he was an easy target. If he flew erratically, his inferior technique might make him an easier prey. He flipped his Nimbus, hanging upside down to throw off aim. A killing curse passed through the empty space where he'd just been. Sweat coursed down his spine as the distance shrank. Dropping altitude, Rogge forced the Nimbus into a steep dive, regaining lost speed and then more. Night deepened, and a mist crawled up from the marsh below. Rex aimed, over and over, but each time his curse was a fraction late. Seeing Rogge dive toward the reed bed, Rex gritted his teeth and forced the firebrand hard. Its brittle frame spewed black smoke, and then, with a terrible, grinding snap, it broke apart. The broom split in two, tumbled through the air, then exploded into splinters, throwing Rex into the reeds and scattering a startled flock of birds. "Damn it! My leg!" Rex ground his teeth as pain flared. His wand had snapped in two as well. The hunter and the hunted were reversed. He stayed utterly still, forcing himself not to cry out and betray his location. Cuckooing bird calls drifted through the reeds. Rex's eyes were wide with panic and pain, like a wounded animal flattened by the earth, breathing shallowly in terror. The night pressed in. If he made no sound, his prey would pass him by. He told himself that, entirely blind to the fact that his enemy could see in the dark. Rogge heard the commotion, turned, and saw the firebrand come apart in midair. He exhaled. "I never hold grudges," he said softly, and then louder, "because I settle all my grudges right away." He hovered above the tangled reeds and fired a stupefy. When Rex dropped stunned, Rogge transfigured Reeds into a stool and lashed him to it. "Let me go, you little wizard, or I'll kill you!" Rex snarled, trying to sound fierce, but Rogge didn't waste words. He took a sharp reed, drove it through Rex's palm, and nailed his hand to the stool. "Ah!" Rex screamed, high and desperate. Rogge slapped him to keep him quiet. "I ask, you answer," he said. "Name, affiliation, why are you in the Quidditch marsh? Why did you attack me?